Okay, hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me here tonight. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm calling this the Sports Bettors Talk Show. That's not a new series. This won't be some kind of recurring thing. This is just a one-off. I saw that there wasn't any football tonight, and I said, hey, let's jump on YouTube. I haven't done a live stream in a while. And then the idea kind of morphed from there. I said, you know what I really miss is that old-style talk show where a random guest might just show up in the middle of your talk show and they wander in and they start talking about some work they're doing elsewhere in the studio lot. I thought that would be a fun concept, so I reached out to all my friends or some of my friends in the sports betting world, and I said, "Hey, guys, can you maybe just pop in now and then on this live stream?" And a lot of them have said yes. They're going to be joining me. I welcome. There's a bunch of people joining now. I think we got about 75 people in the room. They're going to be filtering in here. I have one guest that's sort of on standby. He's going to pop in a little early. But before we do that, while everyone's kind of filling in, I wanted to give you a brief little story just to start off. This isn't a monologue. I'm not going to be able to tell jokes, but something that happened to me yesterday. I'm watching the game, the NFL Wednesday afternoon game that we all saw yesterday. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and it goes to halftime. And I'm like, well, let me just look what the lines are, shop around. And I pulled up Drew Dinsick and Andy Molitor from the Deep Dive podcast. They do a halftime video podcast. It's really very good. If you're on YouTube during halftime, I recommend kind of tuning into it. It's pretty good. But I was kind of had them on the background, and I start shopping around at some lines, and I noticed one book has Pittsburgh minus 7.5 for the game. Now the game was Pittsburgh led by 5. The second half line, since the game line was about 10.5, the second half line was naturally Pittsburgh by 5.5, some 6s out there. And I saw Pittsburgh minus 7.5 for the game, which is equal to Pittsburgh minus 2.5 for the second half. I was like, wow, that's great. I jumped on it. I fired in a bet, then fired in another bet when the line didn't move, and I figured they'd take more action. And then I typed it into their chat there on their broadcast, and I went back and like, no, you know what? I want to bet some more. So I go to bet some more, and the line moved, and I was like, oh, okay. But the line moved in such a crazy way that I was convinced I had done something wrong, because the line moved to Pittsburgh plus 7.5 for the game, totally out of left field. That's like second half plus 12.5. It was a crazy line move. And I was so stunned by it, I just sat there going, what happened? I don't even understand what just happened. So I didn't bet right away. I was trying to figure out, like, did Big Ben collapse in the tunnel in the locker room? What's going on? So then when I finally realized, like, wait a minute, no, that's actually pretty good, I went to bet it, and it was gone. But the moral of this story is, you always have to keep your eyes open, because there's just always opportunity popping up especially if you're in one of these regulated states where it's just kind of the Wild West when it comes to all these sports books that are throwing lines out there and opportunity. You gotta keep your eyes open. And if I hadn't just been casually shopping around, I wouldn't have seen that. And if I hadn't been so stunned that it went to plus 7.5, I would have had a great bet, because my Pittsburgh minus 7.5 was not a winner. That late touchdown by Baltimore killed it. Pittsburgh plus 7.5 sure would have been, though. So you got to keep an eye out and see what happens. It's kind of crazy. So anyway, the format tonight is we're going to have question and answer. There's already people here in the chat, and questions are flying in. We got over 100 people here in the room. It's going to be a great time. You guys can fire out questions to me if you want to talk about some of the videos I've made, some of the concepts I've gone over, some of the things about being a professional sports bettor, some of the things about the industry right now and how it looks. I'm going to have guests come in and out, and hopefully we'll have some chat going on with us, some banter, as the Brits like to say. And then, we'll take some questions from here and there. The guests that are coming in, it's a great lineup. There's gamblers, there's bookmakers, there's legends in the industry, legit legends that I have no business talking to, and there's some journalists. I mean, it's a great lineup. I understand not everybody wants to sit in front of YouTube all night, but if you want to pop in and out as the night goes on, I think as you tune into this over the next couple hours, it's going to be some fantastic conversation related to sports betting. So questions are flying in fast and furious. I'm going to pick one off here and talk about it, and then I'm going to bring in a guest who's in my green room right now. So, here's a good one. Sorry, they're coming in so fast, I'm not able to click on them. There we go. Daniel asks, Jack, what would it look like to earn $100,000 a year sports gambling? That's a great question. And that's a pretty good lead-in for me, because I am in the midst of creating a video right now that is precisely that. And I'm going to release it after I get to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So it is how to make $100,000 a year betting on sports. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to give you some crazy, stupid system where I'm going to say, you know, find a 12-team parlay, bet $100 on it, and if it doesn't hit, find another 12-team parlay. You know, I'm going to give you some actionable advice, some ways to kind of plan this out for yourself, that if you really want to be serious about this, and if you really want to take the time and the effort, yeah, you can make $100,000 a year betting sports. It's not easy and it's not for everyone, but it's attainable. And I think, you know, there's some people out there that are probably on the cusp, and they will take the information from that video and possibly, you know, turn it into something, whether it be a side hustle for yourself or whether it be, you know, something more than a side hustle. So definitely, you know, look forward to that video. At the current rate we're going with subscribers, it's probably going to be out in late December, early January. I hope that's the time frame, because that's about what it'll take for me to piece this all together and make a really quality video for you guys. You know, you can go on YouTube right now and you can find a lot of videos that supposedly tell you how to make $100,000 a year betting on sports, and they're all crap. They're just lousy advice. So one of the reasons I'm making this channel and making that video is to kind of dispel a lot of the bad information that's out there, put out some quality information for everyone. So if you want to speed the plow on getting that video out, tell your friends to subscribe to the channel, because as that count gets close to 10,000, I'm going to have to really start working harder to get that video done. Okay, I am going to bring. I got two guests in the green room right now, so I'm going to bring on one of them first here. The guy that popped in first, he is a. I don't want to throw the word legend around too much right now, but he's kind of legendary in gambling circles. He was part of the MIT Blackjack team. He is runs a podcast related to sports betting, and he is a nice guy, even though a lot of people on Twitter try to pretend that he's not. He is Jeff Ma. Jeff, welcome. Thanks for joining me here tonight. Glad you could make it. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. And honestly, like, we don't want to let the word out that I am actually a nice guy. Like, I've been compared to the Asian guy from Succession on Twitter, which I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or an insult, and it turns out it was a compliment. So I feel good about that. But no, thanks for having me.
So what's the latest you guys have been working on with the podcast? I know you and Rufus, you guys are every week now, right? There's no gaps.
Yeah. You know, we obviously got a lot of feedback, and some of it warranted. We have a style, I think, that doesn't necessarily work with everyone, meaning like it's very much an unproduced, like unfiltered sort of us just having a discussion. And when Rufus and I talk, we interrupt each other. And so we have guests on from time to time who, depending on what time of night we film the thing, I may have had a few glasses of wine, so my interrupting gets a little bit more. But we actually, based on the feedback that we got, and then we also got some tough feedback in how we talked about touts and those types of things. So I called Rufus and I was like, hey, listen, we just got to talk about this. Like, what are our goals of the podcast? Like, what are we trying to accomplish ultimately? And because he was saying like, oh, we need to maybe go to more structure and whatnot. And I think we've always just thought about it as trying to create different content in this space. And, I think it was interesting when you introduced me, you did not say that it was a sports betting podcast, but it was like one that discusses sports betting, which I kind of like. I do think most people would think of it as a sports betting podcast, which is okay. But I do think we aspire to have it be a little bit more than that. And the guys that I talk to a lot on this stuff, we kind of lament the idea that a lot of sports betting content is all the same. That's why certainly like what you're trying to do is great. It's novel. It's not the same. And it's hard to create content that is truly different or differentiated. And I definitely applaud you for trying to do that.
Well, you guys picked the best name right out of the start. Bet the Process. Like that is sort of, because guys that know about sports betting, that know about sports betting, know that it's a process. And for you to kind of name your podcast that, it sort of set the tone right away of, this is how it's really done. It's not done tailing picks. It's not done, with some kind of betting system, that you bet twice as much if you lose the last game, things like that. It would make a good Twitter handle too, but apparently that's long gone, right?
No, I think we have the Twitter handle. I just don't think we actually, like, this is how good Rufus and I are at life. I just don't think we know what the password is to it, because one of the original producers that put it out there still has the password, and we've never actually put enough time and effort to get it back from him. But we'll get that back, because I'm pretty sure we still have that. But the name of it really obviously comes from Sam Hinkie, trust the process kind of thing. Yeah, I agree with you. It is a great name, and it I think that when we named it, which was like 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think we realized how great a name it would become, because the idea of being process driven, I think in sports, it was more tongue in cheek at the time. And now I think people think about it more as like, hey, this is what you actually like, the idea, even just from a macro standpoint of process driven thinking and process driven, being really process driven versus results driven, has gotten just a ton more, positive publicity over the last few years.
Jeff, how much sports betting do you do? I know you are very busy. For those that don't know, Jeff works at Microsoft. He heads up the small business. What was that?
I basically run the startups, all the startup efforts at Microsoft. So if you think about Microsoft, it's a behemoth company that's so prevalent in the enterprise. But over the last, say 10 to 15 years, there's been a lot of innovation developing on the backs of places like AWS and Google, and Microsoft hasn't been a huge part of it. And so my job is to change that. And so I run a team there where our goal is to make startups build on Microsoft and on Microsoft's products like Azure and Teams and Outlook, et cetera. So it's a super fun job. And for me, it was a challenging thing to take on, because I was looking at a lot of opportunities in sports and sports betting both from a big and small company standpoint. And there's tremendous passion there. I bet a fair amount on sports. Like, I enjoy betting on sports. I think I've done it, if ever since I was basically, at some level, ever since I was a 21-year-old on the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, where all the traders there were betting on something. Like, we would, be during March Madness, you would walk around that place and people were trading college basketball teams as if they were, more than they were the options on like Chrysler, which was their day job. So that was where I kind of got into it. And I've always loved it, because I've just been a huge, I grew up a huge sports fan, and, that obviously there was an intersection with gambling, an advantage play, which was the blackjack stuff. And then, sports betting basically combines those two sort of passions. Yeah.
Where I was headed with that question is, you're such a busy guy, and sports betting is really all encompassing. Like I've been a professional gambler for a lot of years now, advantage player, and sports betting is by far the most amount of time required to produce the profit. Which is ironic, because it's something I can do now from home. I can just roll out of bed and do it rather than having to go to a casino. But in terms of like the constant learning that's necessary to keep up with the craft is a great time commitment. So that's why I was curious as to like, where do you find the time to do it?
Well, so it's a good question. And honestly, there was a time where I would have considered myself much more of a sports bettor than I am now. Now I am like not really much of an originator. There are some models that a few of us have put together that look at things like second half plays and that have some pregame. But I had gone from being probably spending a fair amount of time doing it. And then honestly, with having a couple kids now and having more of a real job that takes a fair amount of my time, a lot of it more is tailing people that I trust, and then having, some automated forms of origination. But, that's why when we talk a lot more now on the podcast, I look at Rufus more as the bettor and me more as the host of the show. And that's why that's evolved that way.
All right. So I don't want to ignore all these questions that are coming in during the chat. And this question I'm going to pull up right now is from 806. So there is a question backlog here. FlexOS says, how much can you really realistically make from sports betting? I'll give a short answer to this. And then, Jeff, I'm interested to hear your answer as well. You can make as much as you want to make. However, there's not an economy of scale in this business. In other words, the better you get, the harder it gets. And I often talk about the science of sports betting and the art of sports betting. And for a lot of people, learning the science of sports betting is very hard, but it's possible. Learning the art of sports betting is like constantly evolving as an artist and finding new ways to get the money down and new network of people to help you out. But it's really, when it comes to advantage play, it's one of those higher ceiling advantage plays. I know guys that for the Mayweather-McGregor fight, they had exposure in the millions on that fight, and the casinos were happy to take it. So, that was a once in a lifetime situation where, Jeff, you tried to take money out of casinos for a long time. The casinos don't want to give up that money. And in the case of that situation, they were so heavy with McGregor money, they wanted to take all the Mayweather money they could, and guys, had unlimited lines they could bet at. But Jeff, what's your thought on that question there?
I think your answer is a good answer, but I also think it's challenging to make a lot of money in sports betting, not because you can't get an edge, but because most of the situations are pretty illiquid, meaning like a lot of the places where you have big edges. So part of the challenge with being a professional sports bettor isn't just building a winning model. It's being able to get down enough capital at the right prices to do that. And so, like, the consortiums that are outside of the US that bet on things like soccer, where you can get a ton of money down, I feel like those are the guys that are sort of making the most money. Obviously, in the NFL, you can get a ton of money down. And then, again, like a lot of these successful people that are out there are people that have built these networks where they're able to get a lot of money down. So I think it's a complicated question, but I think ultimately, if you're committed to it, you can make a lot of money off it. But it's definitely a hard way to make a living, meaning like it's not just as simple as building a great model and pressing like submit on a Chris or Pinnacle website or something like that.
How about we get a third opinion?
Sure.
We got somebody else here. And
then I want to be respectful to the rest of your guests. You reached out to me and were nice enough to have me on, and I want to be super supportive of everything that you do, because I have a lot of respect for you. So anytime you want to have me on, I'm happy to come on, but I'm happy to jump off now because I have childcare to deal with. But thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate you jumping on. I'll be honest. I just reached out to Jeff in the last hour or so, and I said, "Hey, I'm doing this tonight. You want to swing by?" And he's like, "I'll be there at the start." And I'm like, "Perfect." That kind of fills a little gap that I had. So,
cool.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and hope to have a drink with you at some point in happier times in Vegas or somewhere down the line. In
real life in Vegas, we'll do it again.
Sounds good, man.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
See ya. All right. So joining me now is the legend himself. There's been some talk of you in the chat as we're going along here. This is Drew Dinsick. He runs the Deep Dive podcast with his co-host Andy Molitor, and he's better known as Whale Capper on the Twitters. And Drew, how you doing tonight, man?
Thank you for having me on, Captain Jack. This is the first of, I'm assuming, of many Sports Bettors talk shows. I love the idea. I love the format. This works. There's space for this. I mean, There's obviously an audience for, there's audiences there. If people will watch, if people will watch Real Housewives drama, certainly there's interest in, the handicapping of sports when there's no live sports on. And here we are, Thursday Night Football, not on tonight, thanks to, our NFL reshuffling the schedule. So glad that there's something cool like this.
Cool. Well, you were really helpful to agree to come on and be the leadoff guest. And I even said, can you come on a little earlier? Because I might have a little gap there at the beginning, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to fill the time. I have yet to get my adult beverage. This is actually ice cream. I can say this is.
Cheers. Either way, cheers.
It's in a pint glass. We'll just pretend it's like a red beer.
I like it.
But no, I want to thank Drew up front here. I had a little freak out about an hour and a half ago because I did a little test broadcast and there was some lag to it. And I was like, oh, this is the reason I don't like doing live streams anymore, is because technical issues always pop up. I reached out to Drew and he was like, have you tried this? And I did that and boom, it fixed it. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Of course, man.
What, let's get into some of these questions here. Any comments there on that last question, is how much can realistically be made from sports betting? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Oh man, there are people who've been doing it for multiple years who are making six figures a year. They're mostly, I heard a lot of what you guys were breaking down, and if you're good at building out a network and maintaining enough accounts to get liquidity in pools where there's a real edge, like let's say props or college basketball halftimes, right? If you can hit those markets because you can distribute your action broadly enough that you can keep those accounts alive, I think it's entirely realistic to expect to make six figures a year if your stuff is good. Similarly, if you're willing to bet NFL sides and or NBA sides, soccer. I think there's a lot of money to be made there. If you're interested in trading in tennis, for instance, and you have access to some of the European markets, you can make a lot of money that way too. I'm sure you will have people on tonight who probably would be a little shy about how much they have made sports betting, but I would be willing to guess that six figures or seven figures a year is not unrealistic given, the breadth of what they can get down and, how high quality their product is. Yeah,
no, look, it's a high ceiling. It's not an easy ceiling to get towards.
Oh, no,
it's a high ceiling.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's there's lots of ways to monetize too, obviously. I mean, there's, you don't have to just be a guy that knows what to pick NFL sides. There's arbitrage strategies, and you've covered a ton of this in your series of ways to optimize your betting strategy so that it's not all about did I handicap this game correctly? And I think if anyone's especially interested in that, then the stuff that you've covered over this last couple months is very valuable to those people.
Do you do any kind of modeling with your work? I know you guys talk about numbers, but I've never really heard much about like the actual behind it.
Oh, of course. I don't think you can realistically expect to be better than break even if you don't have some sort of analytical model.
Okay.
Honestly.
Because the reason I bring that up is because we have a question here in the audience.
Sure.
From Arthur Kent, and he's a modeler, and over the past 4 seasons, his models have performed better earlier in the season rather than later. Any rationale?
Yeah.
I have an opinion on that one, and I'll go first, and I'm going to toss it over to you, Drew. I see that all the time. Lines become more efficient as more information kind of becomes available, and the markets become more efficient. And yes, I definitely have the same thing. Baseball is, like, for me, the poster child for mid-season efficiency, because baseball hits around June and I just can't beat it anymore. Honestly, baseball hits the end of May and I can't beat it. But from April and May, during normal times, baseball's a gold mine. But for whatever reason, mid-season, baseball just tightens up in terms of, I guess, the lines get more efficient, the pitchers become more known, the players round into shape. I'm not sure what it is. But you have similar feelings there, Drew?
I can tell you from experience that any given season, it tends to be one or the other. Either I'm on fire early and then the market catches up to me. And in that case, what it is you've just done a very good job of establishing priors, like a better job than the market on average, right? Like that's all you really have to do. We have a lot of friends in this industry who bet college football, for instance, right? And if they get started in like May, right, where they're breaking down names, transfers, recruiting classes, coaching tendencies, and where coaches have moved. There are so many teams that if you're not starting that early and establishing really high quality priors, then week one you have no hope of winning. You're coin flipping, right? And but if you do all that work, you put on all that effort, and you have really high quality priors to start the season, you are going to smoke. And we have good friends that that week 1, 2, 3, 4 in the college football season, it's like impossibly good, like how far ahead of the market they are. But the problem is, if you're betting high liquidity, you're training the market and basically informing them of what your priors are, because eventually the lines will start moving in your direction. And then everybody who's using any kind of a market analysis approach is going to see, okay, Buffalo's better than we thought, right? Like we didn't know that they had blank,
Carolina.
And Coastal Carolina, apparently they're good. The market has moved in their direction now 3 straight weeks. Clearly there's some signal here. And, so the harder, the more you bet, in these major markets, you tend to train the market, so to speak, if you have priors that are better than the average. And come week 5, all of a sudden, everybody's got your number. Right. And so the edges are leaner. Maybe you're reaching on certain plays. Maybe you're only betting into numbers where your model says you have an edge, but there is information you didn't have. Like this guy's not going to be in the game. This quarterback's out with COVID. And, you're sitting here like, well, why is this number this? My model says this. You find all of a sudden middle of the season, you might be only seeing edges and advantages in games where you don't have the important information. Right. This absolutely happens. Right. And it's important to kind of recognize, if you have a good start to your season, recognize, okay, it's because my priors were strong, right? And of course, also do a decent amount of looking backwards and making sure it wasn't luck, right? Like it wasn't, I got lucky for 4 weeks and because that can happen too, right? But if you're seeing real signal, if the market's moving with you by week 2, 3, 4 in any sport, I would say it's a pretty good indication that your prior is stronger than the market on average. And at that point, you got to start to be dynamic, right? You got to figure out, okay, well, what are some, you can't just use the same exact model, same inputs, same weighting, and expect to continually find an edge. You have to, be prepared to look across what's happening and be one step ahead in terms of adjustments. NBA is probably the best example for this. If, once you get 4-5 weeks into the NBA season, and once there's enough data that people who are doing a little bit more like machine learning type of modeling and stuff like that, they're going to be on it. Their number is going to be way tight. And, there are people who don't even bet first couple weeks of the season because they just like to accumulate that data. And at that point, you're betting with the disadvantage. And if you're using the same exact model, same weighting, you could be in trouble. And so then you have to kind of pivot your approach. You have to be dynamic. You can't just be kind of static in terms of what you think. What you think the right way to make the number is. Carl Anthony Towns misses all this time in the beginning of the season for the Timberwolves last year, and our friend Sports Cheetah very clearly pointed out, like, hey, it's pretty obvious that the on-off with Carl Anthony Towns, he's amazing offense, very poor defense right now. The totals are only adjusted 3 points; they should be 9, right? And for like 2 weeks he was just able to hammer over until the market catches up. And so I think once you get enough data into the season that and if you're using a static model, you really have to just have that as your baseline. And rather than bet on that information, you just look, okay, well, this is an edge. Why is there an edge? Right? Is Kawhi Leonard not playing and I don't know? Right. I fell into a bunch of those traps the first couple of years I was betting NBA, because all of a sudden, middle of the season, the only edges I saw were when I didn't know a guy was going to get rested. And then I made the bet, surprise, he's not in. And, the rest is history. You lose 6 points of closing line value on top of it and then get smoked.
That's an excellent point for this coming season, is because this coming season is going to be all about player-based models are going to really have a field day, because we're going to have COVID issues pop up day of game and unexpectedly. And, look what the NFL had to deal with. Well, the NBA season, that's a much smaller circle of team. You're not dealing with a 52-man roster. You're dealing with a 10, 11-man roster. And you're going to have to be very agile and react to these changes as soon as they happen. If you can get some information before the line moves, it's going to be huge. It's going to be I don't know. I'm looking for the right word there. I was going to say test show, but I'm not sure if I should.
Totally
agree. Be crazy.
Yeah. Totally agreed.
So let's talk a little bit about your podcast and about what you guys are starting to do on YouTube. And to do that, I guess I should bring in.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Andy Molitor.
Hey, you guys are up there.
How you doing, Andy? Good.
You look good. You look good on the top shelf, Jack. I like that.
You're
good. I've been just listening along. I that was me commenting. I said Drew was out wine shopping because it's probably true.
I saw that.
Yeah, but
that was good.
I didn't tell you, but I was out wine shopping. It's true.
God, you always are. Yeah, it's been a weird week. Like the NFL week was over on a Wednesday. We didn't have a game tonight. It was kind of goofy. And yeah, I mean, good topics. I kind of thought of the how much money can you make? There's a little anecdote that I didn't think of when I was newish. And it was down to somebody who was betting legitimate amounts and doing it pretty much as their full-time job. And I mean, I won't say who it is, but either way, he wasn't from this country. He was using some offshores that aren't available if you're inside the US. And I was with him and he wanted to make some bets. And he says, well, I can't bet with the book I want to use right now. And he talked about maybe having his significant other place a bet for him. And he says, I don't think I can do that because she would freak out if she saw how much money was in there. Because she would just think, well, why can't we spend that money? And that's the biggest thing that people don't understand about a professional bettor. Like, if you want to be making bets of that size, the bankroll that you can't touch is so big compared to, you can't just take that money and, that's the rent money. And hopefully I win it back this week and then I can pay the rent. Like, you have to have all this money set aside for that. Like the amount of money he had just deposited in the books, because you have to be able to, ride out those wild swings where you have a slow week, a bad week, variance, deviance. Like that part, once he explained it like that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, that sucks that money's just always sitting there though. He's like, yeah, it sucks bad. It's like, because you just, that's my bankroll. It has to sit there. I can't take that. I have to use that to make the extra money.
That's a really good point. And that's definitely a key. There's a lot of factors that come into when you start to scale this up higher. It's a lot of stuff. And that's why I wanted to make a video that kind of talks about a lot of it, is because I don't think people kind of take all into consideration those factors. But hopefully I can do that. So you guys have the Deep Dive podcast. I've listened to that for years now. I like your banter between the two of you is just really good. And so now recently you guys have starting, I think just yesterday, live stream the podcast as you record it on YouTube. I listened to it last night. I watched you guys last night. Very envious of some of your technology. You guys definitely have upped your game. You got some sponsorship going there. That's cool. Got some new microphones, got some green screens and good lighting, I can tell. So kudos on that. But talk to me about what you're doing there with Deep Dive Podcast and where it's going forward.
Well, we're gonna, we have secured essentially the support financially to continue to make 2 episodes a week for the next 2 years at least, which is exciting because this is a passion for us. I mean, obviously, I think the fact that we're not doing this as a job, but instead of doing it because we love to do it, comes across. The idea that we were at one point kind of pirate radio was fun. And I was a little hesitant to say, oh, well, let's go corporate and get the nicer stuff. That was stupid. It's so much better to have the high quality stuff. It's not even funny. I absolutely love it. The sound quality is up. The the idea of putting it across more platforms is fun and exciting. And really, we're just looking to continue to grow. And presumably, once we reach enough earballs, we'll have legitimate sponsorship opportunities for. Yeah, tonight I'm drinking a lovely IPA from the Russian River Brewing Company, Pliny the Elder.
Everybody knows that beer.
And it would be nice if if in addition to just the money that's flowing into this space from the sports books, if we could find legitimate sponsors for alcohol, golf, other leisure activities, because it's pretty clear that we have an audience of men of a certain age who have disposable income, and it would be nice to kind of grow to the point where we can just run ads for cool stuff and continue to do what we love to do, which is so fun, which is talk football and gambling.
That's something we were bad at and probably still remain bad at. It's just like, well, there's no class for that in school. Is like, even in college, there's not securing podcast sponsorship 101. That's tricky. And as I sit there enjoying my smooth, delicious tin cup rye, I think like who would sponsor this sort of podcast? Like we often joke about that. Like it should be a whiskey sponsorship as much as money we give those guys. So yeah, it's tricky navigating that part of it. Like the rest of it seems to have been kind of easy, just like, oh, we'll talk football. And like that was the conversation. And I'm sure, I don't know about you, man. You're an AP, longtime pro. But doesn't talking stuff out just make you better at it sometimes? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes you think about things differently. And when you put stuff out there in media, you really have to believe it, because there's a bit of, you're putting yourself out there. And, it's not like your little argument with the Zilbo Baggins got after you saying, where's your picks? Like, man, you know who you're tussling with here, Doofus. But, the accountability that comes with putting any sort of information, even just the reviews you do for the sports book and stuff, that's stuff you stand behind, and it makes you think twice about exactly what you're saying. And I think it makes a sharper opinion, because this is out there in perpetuity, really. Nothing ever is deleted from the internet. Ask anybody who's ever sent a nude that got stolen. True.
No, you make a good point, and you're right. Talking things out loud is a great way to kind of reason. For some reason, it just is. Like, and I actually had somebody reach out to me the other day, and they were like, "This is my process. I get together with these guys, and we talk about the bets, and if we all agree, then we go make the bet. If one of us disagrees, we reason it out till we come up with a solution. And we've been doing really good. Do you think this is valid?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's totally valid." That is great. If you have a little network of people that you can talk to and bounce things off of, and they're also knowledgeable people, you're gonna make it. Hey, there's a question here in the chat, and it's from somebody that I respect, Mr. Patrick.
Saw that covers,
from
man.
Covers.com at covers. So this is, I guess, going back to what Drew was talking about here. So we'll kind of rewind back to what we were saying, but. How long did it take you guys to get that portion of bankroll that needs to be untouchable, as you say, to be able to bet full time? Drew, you want to take that, and then I'll follow in with some stuff too.
I mean, realistically, you need a middle step.
Yeah.
I think is the real answer. You could inherit the money, obviously. You could buy it. You could have bought Bitcoin in 2017 and accidentally backed into a bankroll. But more realistically, I think if you have high quality origination of sports betting information, be it women's European basketball or Russian ice hockey, right? Like if you have a niche market that you can capitalize on, there are people in the industry who you can network with to facilitate a relationship where you can get money down and scale. And you may not love the trade-off of how much of the bet goes in your pocket versus your partner's. But I think that there's an important middle step, really, if you are an originator in sports betting, that you have to, you just have to spend a couple of years, and it's a learning experience regardless. It's a very valuable learning experience, I would say. But there's no there's no match.com between people with outs and people with origination. Like and for sure, like until we I don't know that we're ever going to live in a world where you can get a $10,000 bet down on women's women's European basketball. So it's
netball.
You're almost always going to have to find someone who can do the other half of the job, because it's a team. It's a team effort when you get up to the level of I'm going to be a professional originator. And at some point you get to you make enough make enough money that way that you can go off on your own and bet in Las Vegas or or offshore or wherever. But I would say, it's probably, of the people we know who have made the leap to professional sports bettor, it's probably a 2 or 3 year, maturation, so to speak. Right. And there is for sure the middle step where you're part of a bigger team and you can get more liquidity.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'll add in some comments here just based on my own feeling. Building a bankroll is tough. And when you're building a bankroll, you need to look at it as the process of building the bankroll. So you need to be looking for what path do you want to do in building that bankroll? Do you want to go high variance and try to take a shot to greatly increase your bankroll, knowing that you could bottom out and have to start over again? And if you have replenable sources of income, that could be a valid chance. But for most people, building a bankroll through lower variance action is preferable, and that can be all types of low-hanging fruit, whether it be promos, that I talk about all the time on my videos, whether that be what Drew was talking about with kind of finding a network and being able to share your skills with other people that'll help give you a little bit of a free roll or a equity share, or it could be in exploiting props and things like that that are a little bit more beatable. But as you build that network and as you build that bankroll, you get to that point, and I think at some point you start to distribute that into buckets. In other words, like, here's my sports bucket, here's my NBA bucket, here's my Major League Baseball bucket. And you're betting on that with that bucket of money in your bankroll, and the rest of your bankroll is not associated with that. And I do that a lot because that helps me take risks in situations where, I may have a pretty sizable bankroll, but I'm not going to want to even bet 1% of it into this venture because that's too high of a number, and the market can't, take on that type of volume. So I will just have my set portion of my this experiment bucket. And as you get more buckets, that becomes more streams of income and different ways to do things. And it kind of distributes out your income load. And then that there becomes your kind of killing out your variance or smoothing out your variance. And that, that's sort of one of the ways that I approach it when I'm looking to use my bankroll. And the other thing I do is I keep a good portion of my bankroll in funds, index funds, and investments like that are a steady growth. And there's been plenty of years where I look back and I go, good thing I had that, because if that was just sitting in cash in a shoebox under my bed, that would have been a lousy way to use that money over the course of this past year, this year being one of them.
That's a joke I make a lot with people. I got a text from someone who played I think it was Texans second half in the Thanksgiving. And he said, hey, my he had family over, and he's like, my brothers, they played that, they made a bunch of money. They want to know what to do with the Cowboys game in the first half. And I said, the answer is low fee index funds. Don't bet on the Cowboys game. Like just find a nice index fund. And he laughed. I'm like, but seriously, don't let them bet that money.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you want to bring somebody else in on the conversation here?
We've talked about networking and how important it is. So
let's talk to somebody who's worked for a sports book.
Yes.
He's worked for sports books offshore. He's worked in Vegas for many years. He's very knowledgeable, and he seems to have a lot of good stories. I'm going to bring him in. He's Dave Sharapan. He is SportsbkConsig on Twitter. And in fact, here, I got a little boom, pop it up there. If you guys aren't following him on Twitter, you're missing a lot of really good stories from how things go in sports books. It's a whole different ecology, and Dave's been there through a lot of it. Dave, I'm going to make you the big picture here. There you go.
Man. What's up, fellas?
How you doing?
Oh man, I'm good. Just sitting in the kitchen, hanging out, and this thing starts going on, and I got to come in. I mean, I come in right now. At this point, I'm the least maybe smartest guy in the room. I'm all right listening to you guys talk and do all this stuff, and you're talking about bankrolls, you're talking about buckets and markets and all this other shit, and I'm just sitting there going, what are they talking about? What are we talking about right now? But I mean, Jack, listen, me and you are sitting, I'm in the kitchen. You're obviously in the den in the office. I don't know where the hell Andy is, but man, it looks great. He got this haircut.
I know.
Holy crap. And Drew has maybe the best hair on gambling Twitter. And he's sitting in some fancy ass bar. They got these big mics. Like, I feel like I got to ramp up my game.
I know. I should have had a no green screen rule here tonight. But, that's all right. You're keeping it real, Dave. You're keeping it real.
Well, that's what we do, Jack, right? Like, I mean, this has been my life for such a long time that I don't know any other way. Like, I went to run an offshore sportsbook when I was 27. This is 1997. I was in Curacao and I was betting. Look at Andy. You can do the math. You're a math guy. You know how many years ago that was. I'm 50. But I learned the business down there from guys that were doing it out of their pocket for real. Like it was real. And every day we didn't have a blackjack pit to cover some losses. We didn't have any rooms or hotels. We didn't have gift shops or spas. We were booking games to book games, and we took action from all over the world. This notion of like throwing people out and limiting. If we offered 5 dimes a game, everybody got 5 dimes a game. If we wanted to take more, we did. And if you guys were beating us, anyone was beating us, we had to get better, or we needed your side. It was very simple. I learned early on. Listen, you don't have to beat everybody. You just got to get on the right sides of the guys that are good. So we're basketball guys.
Love this.
We got guys that were football guys. We had guys that were tennis guys. I mean, I'm talking to 2 tennis guys right here. Come and bet with me first. That was the deal. That's the way I learned the business. If you want to bet, and I'm you sign up an account or you come to the book and you keep coming and collecting, we're going to have dinner, me and you, and I'm going to say, all right, look, I want you first. You can have, I guarantee you can have, if it's 2 dimes a game, you have 2 dimes a game with me every day, but you have it with me first, please. Or second, if you have a relationship with somebody longer. I'm either first or second. That's it. We never went further than that. But play with us and we'll use it and we'll get better. But like throwing anybody out, it's a volume business. We got to take bets. So now we've been doing it in Vegas since 2005. The media stuff for me is where this is all going. Like I enjoy the media stuff. I mean, these guys podcast every time I see Drew with the background at the beach and all the the sand and the sun. Andy's up there doing his thing.
Yeah, those aren't even green screens. He's legitimately at the beach.
Yeah,
like when I'm out in the woods.
It always looks good. I mean, and he's setting up the shop. That's not by accident. He just go, oh, let's just get that little tripod and set it right here. He worked on that shot for 30 minutes. Yeah,
busted. Yeah,
but,
busted.
But the media stuff, the ability to have these conversations, and you reach out to me and say you want to do this. I'm like, of course I want to do this. We've been talking and having these conversations. I have my whole life. I mean, I was 10 years old and I was the kid with the tip sheets, that said, hey, you can pick 4 games. You got to get them all right. Every game's 3 and 7. And if you get them all right, it's a 4-teamer. It pays 6-1. Ties lose. And, it was a really good deal. So,
yeah, for you.
Yeah. So from that to this and being able to have these conversations openly that I've been having with people for literally 30 years. It's fun, man. I mean, it's great. It's exciting. And, sharp side, square side, call it what you want, all that stuff. Just talk about this. Talk about the business. I love talking about the people. The people that I have met in this business is just been unbelievable. And if I can actually, finish the passion project and write a book and tell the stories and interview people, I can't wait to do it and really, gather it. I think there's a whole volume series of it because, now with it being open and legal sports books in the United States, anywhere other than Vegas, it blows my mind.
Yeah, you got to.
I'd read that Ginzer book.
Still undefeated, Andy. Still undefeated. Keep picking against
America's team.
Keep picking against them.
Did you book Spanky when you were down there in the islands? Did you know him or know of him?
So for almost 2 years, I'm down in Curacao. I don't see any faces. Everyone's an account number. Everyone's a voice. Everyone, and to this day, I remember certain account numbers and certain passwords because you had this, you called, you said 12530 auto. The girl answered the phone. We didn't have internet wagering. Everything was a big room of people answering phones. So you started to pay attention. It only got to me when there was a problem or when they called the bat phone. So if I'm taking Drew's bets and the girls are answering his phone and every week he's collecting, you know what? Give me 12530 auto. I got to talk to him. He would come to the bat phone. I'd say, listen, you got to call this number. And it was a number that me or my guy Smoke answered the phone. And we got the bet. So now you had to talk to one of us, but we got it first. We would put the game on hold in the office. You answer the phone. Who is it? 12530. What do you got? Game 354, 5 dimes. Hold 354. Whole office, put it on hold. What do you got? I'm laying. Okay. -6. Good. See ya. 2 seconds. Phone call. No, didn't ask. Who are you? What do you need? What are this? Get the bet. Move the number. And then tell the girls it's good. Open it up. So I'm doing this. And I'm 27. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. And then I start to really learn. So I lived through it all, come back to the States, come out to Vegas. Guys start showing up at the counter at the M because we opened up the M and we were taking everything. The guy walks up and I hear his voice. I said, wait a second. Did you bet at ABC? Well, why? Who are you? Well, I was down there and this and that. Everybody, we don't know anybody. We don't know each other, but we do. Of course, we were betting. He was betting. He was booking. He was doing whatever he was doing, but he was doing it with us. Absolutely. So this goes back like so many years. Guys would start to show up. I'm down at the other end of the counter, and I hear a guy show up. I'm like, wait a second. Can that be? I go down and I say, hey, and I use his first name. He's like, who are you? I'm like ABC Dave or Curacao Dave. Holy shit, are you kidding me? That's you. I didn't think you looked like that. No, that's me. That's you. I thought you were taller. I mean, it was so funny. Well, you just had so many funny conversations. Yeah,
I could see Spanky going.
Yeah. So yes, no, Spanky and I have known each other for a while. And we didn't know it, but then I knew him obviously at the M and everything, and it was a long cast of characters, man. You want to talk about an era? Whew, those first couple of years at the M were unbelievable.
All right, so let's talk about that a little bit here, as much as we can. It is a sensitive subject, I'm sure. So for those that don't know, when Cantor Gaming came into existence, they walked into the relative room of sports bettors in the world and said, "Bring it. We'll take anybody. We'll take all action. Bring it. We got this algorithm in the back, and it can solve anything. Bring it. In-game, game, do it." And they brought it. And so the M was the headquarters there for Cantor Gaming, later CG Technology. And so the big bettors in this world had guys that were stationed at the M waiting for line moves. And then they would go up with their literal knapsacks of cash.
Big bags.
chunk down, and Spanky was one of those. There's many others, and maybe some of them will be on this show tonight. But so, Dave, what was your role back then, and how was that playing out? And did you ever look at this and go, this is great, or this won't work, or what was your thought on how that was developing?
So my time in Vegas started downtown at the Golden Nugget. And you want to talk about like grinding, you're working at the Golden Nugget. But when I got there, Chris Andrews was the director. Nick Bogdanovich was the assistant director. And two pretty big names who went on to, big things in this business. And we were taking everybody then. So I thought I hit the jackpot. I thought I went from Curacao to out of the business to now being back just like it was offshore. We had everybody coming in, every character. And then Tim and Tom sold to Landry's, and they came in and they're out. So, man, I'm sitting at the Golden Nugget, and I'm down there, and I'm grinding, and we're kicking people out. Things change. We become an amenity rather than a book. So I go out to the M, and this starts. And now we're out in the middle of nowhere. It's the end of Las Vegas Boulevard. It feels like it's closer to California than it is the Strip. So we got to get people out there. So we're taking all bets. And, the boys in the back were boys. I mean, everybody was young. I was the old guy of the crew. And they're like, you coming in the back, you're going to help us with the numbers. And I'm like, look, I'm good. I'm just going to stay out front. I'm going to write tickets. I'll help you and stuff. But then they got me back doing in-game at the beginning, and I started to see the writing on the wall. I'm like, I see who's betting this. And you got me back here looking at this computer thing, and it's telling me what the line is, and this computer don't know shit. This computer is wrong, and we're getting killed. And I'm like, nope, this ain't for me. I'm going to stay out front. So we got guys coming in with bags. I saw every kind of bag, from a paper bag, a shopping bag, a Louis Vuitton bag, to everything, coming in with money to bet. So I'm like, what is going on right now? So it was a little bit of like, to answer your question in a really roundabout way, it was kind of a what is going on here moment. And we would negotiate at the counter. Guy would come to the counter and say, I want to bet 50,000 on a game. We'd look down. I'm like, man, it's Tuesday in July. I don't think we could take 50. How about 20? We'll take 20 and then, move the number. Can you bet the rest at the second number? Well, do I have to? Well, that's the only way we can take it. Yeah, well, all right. And boom, we would. So we would have decisions like every day. You never knew. We would have 50, 60, $100,000 decisions in basketball in first half. So did I think it was going to work? I mean, I do, because we have volume and we were getting out there. I mean, like, people were coming. And then, I don't know, we go back to this thing about, do you need brick and mortar when you have mobile? Do you need brick and mortar when you have accounts? And they kind of veered off path and started putting books down on the Strip and off the Strip, and everything got spread real thin. And then obviously, you can Google and find out exactly what happened. I mean, I was there the day everybody came in and said, we're taking computers out. We're doing this. It was incredible. I'm saving that for the book, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just that
and
day.
You teasing the book.
I walked in that day, and there was a guy running out. He was in his late 60s, and he hadn't run in 20 years, and he was running. And I was like, where are you going? He's like, they're in there. The feds are in there. The feds are in there. And he was running. And I was like, whoa. So I walked in, and I was like, what's going on? And there was one guy there. He'll remain nameless right now. He said, yep, everybody got pitched. They said to open up like normal. What? And we did. And then it just it got up from there. Look at Fox. Look at Fox. You got out the back one. I need a sponsor, Fox. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? I need help.
Of all the things to put on your green screen, you picked a toaster oven.
That's right. I mean, listen, I'm lucky I'm allowed to do this in the house. I got 3 daughters and a kid. The whole house has become a schoolroom.
Jack's lucky it's not softball night.
Right. They're at the cages. I dropped them off at the cages. They're like, what do you mean you have to do a podcast with a bunch of guys all over the country? I said, listen, this is a big one. I got to do it.
Yeah.
This is a big one. Hey,
you better have the book half done by the time we have you on in the spring.
we'll ramp it up by
Or
then.
at least come up with a title. We'll give you that.
Fair enough.
So I know a pretty good writer, and he just happens to be in the green room right now. So we're going to bring him in, ladies and gentlemen. Long-time sports betting journalist, and he is a journalist. I have a lot of respect for him and the way he covers this industry, and I don't have that respect for everyone. So that's a key endorsement. But a good man, friend of mine from ESPN, Mr. David Purdum. Dave, welcome.
Hey, Captain Jack. I thought I had dibs on the M book, didn't I?
We're working on that, right?
Yes.
Good to see you, sir. I'm not used to seeing that hat. I always see you with a hat, but not a baseball cap. That kind of blows my mind.
Baseball cap with Snoopy on it. I just got off the soccer pitch in the pickleball court. So
there you go. So how you doing, Dave? How's everything going?
Here. Let's see. Is that better?
Oh, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Sorry about that.
So we're talking here with Dave Sharapan, and he's seen this industry, and we're only up to 2011 right now. Like there's a whole other decade to get to of what he's seen and experienced. But you've been around for just about that long before. For those that don't know, David Purdum used to work at Covers. Did some writing there. Now, were you using your last name then, or was that the other name?
When I started, I just used David Payne. My middle name is Payne, Payne. I was working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution at the time, and freelancing was a little bit of a taboo, but newspaper business wasn't doing great. So I was taking my chances with there. So I started there, and that was in 2008. It was because I was getting ready to be a dad, and I needed some extra income.
Okay. And was that your first exposure to the sports betting world?
Well, I'd always bet. I lived in New Orleans for a long time and worked at a country club. I worked at the New Orleans Country Club, which is the Mannings are members there, Archie and Peyton. And there was a bookmaker there that we all knew very well. And that's why I got some pretty good experience there firsthand. And then I was a traditional journalist for a long time, writing, like I said, at the AJC and everywhere else. I was always kind of fascinated with the sports betting industry. And when I started to write about it, the characters that I came across were just really, fun to write about, great stories. So I really started to enjoy it then. And at that time, the competition in terms of covering sports betting was mostly pick sellers, guys selling picks, and everybody was trying to tell you what to bet. And I was coming at it from I just want to hear about what is being bet and the stories that are coming out of it. I wanted to take more of a straight reporter's role, and it was kind of a niche I got lucky with, and here I am today.
Cool. I'm interested to get your thoughts, and anyone else that's here can kind of jump in with some questions, and it doesn't have to be just to Dave. And what are you drinking there, and what is that glass?
What the hell was that cup?
That's a Christmas vacation. That's outstanding.
Yes.
The nice moose at the front should have let you know.
I need the rights to that. I need to I'm gonna merch that as the Dave Purdum cup. All right, so here's a question I got for you, and I may have asked you this before, but did you ever think that in 2016-17, that 2018-19, I'm not even going to go 2020, 2018-19 would be like it is, where it just exploded? Did you see that there would be this European invasion? Did you see that there would be this groundswell of people that wanted to learn more about sports betting, that that it would be so pervasive that you working at ESPN would no longer be censored about it? You could just be, open and honest about what the business is.
I think the last 2 years since PASPA was overturned in 2018 have been way more aggressive than I expected, for sure, especially the embrace of the leagues of sports betting. I mean, we got sports books at stadiums now. I mean, this was 2 years ago, and they were telling that if we legalize sports betting, it would be the end of all sports. And now we have sports books at stadiums. So that part of it has been a complete surprise to me.
Wow. Drew, you got something for us?
Yeah, I got a quick question for you. So,
Drew's making me laugh in the chat.
it's not what you think. Andy.
No, I know. Don't ask back.
The coverage of the big bet, right? Like it's an industry upon itself almost, and we are right off of a very well publicized story. Somebody bet $550,000 on the Seahawks minus 6.5, and it comes down to a 2-point conversion at the end of that game. I saw it. It does. Everybody's retweeting it, talking about it before the game, during the game, whatever. And is there a space for content of because I wanted to watch that guy watch that play more than I wanted to watch the game end. Honestly,
that's actually awful, Drew.
I wanted to go through the either the misery or the joy that guy felt on the 2-point conversion made or missed. Like how do you go about creating that sort of content? And do you think, is it just me? I'm a sick person that I want to see that? Or do you think there's an audience for that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge audience for it. A lot of people, I thought you were going to ask, why do you guys cover that, and stuff like that. And a lot of people criticize them. And to me, as a reporter, it's the most interesting part of the market, right? It's if I'm not covering the biggest bets that are placed, am I really covering the market? That doesn't make it doesn't make much sense to me. But yeah, that would be just tremendous. I would really want to run into one of those guys that has laid like 300,000 to win 10 grand, lays the big money line favorites. Those are the guys I just want to know the story behind it. Because people start just killing these guys. Oh, he's an idiot. There's more thinking. There's something in there. Maybe he has a hedge on something, or maybe it's a bunch of group of guys that pooled their money just for they're out in Vegas and just want a little extra money. So I would someday I'm going to run in and find
maybe that money needed a good wash.
Exactly.
And nobody's going to read an article like, "Oh, Andy put $200 on a 6-team teaser." Or whatever. That's not a fun article. Like somebody wants to read about that mass. Yeah. I often wonder about that though, with some of those, like Drew said, living the ups and downs of that bet. But sometimes you wonder, like, if a guy is willing to put $500,000 on a game, like what part of his bankroll is that? Like, is it even like a sweat, or is it just like us getting mad about a bigger bet? Like you're mad about it, but it's like, oh, that's not life changing. Like, I wonder how big some of these bankrolls are, or if these guys are seriously overextending themselves on one play. And boy, if they did that on a Seahawks play, God bless them.
God bless them.
Getting involved in the Seahawks at all with that much money.
Look, I've talked to some of these big bettors, and some of them have more money than brains, but some of them, this is just one guy said to me, a guy that has bet 7 figures, not 9 figures, 7 figures on a game, said to me, "Hey man, this is my sports talk radio. Like, you call into sports talk radio, you have an opinion, and your opinion doesn't really matter. But now I can put some money behind it, and this is my opinion on the game. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'll probably call in next week and tell you how right I was. And as a professional bettor, I cringe a little at that, because that's not how I operate, and that's not how I think people should operate. But I understand there is a subset here of people that think this way, and they, to throw $1 million on a game is not a big deal to them. And to them, it's just like, oops, I was wrong. So look, Dave Sharapan, largest bet you ever saw. Do you remember? Was it just, did they all kind of blend together?
Oh no! Like I've taken $1 million cash bet on the Super Bowl. Guy walked in, said, "I want to make a bet on the game. I don't really know how to do it." And I said, "Okay, what do you want to bet?" This is the morning of the Super Bowl, Packers Steelers. Right? I'm the only guy there. It's me and one other person at the book. And he says, "I want to bet the game. I don't know how." "Well, do you want to bet points? Do you want to bet money line? Who do you want to bet?" "I want to bet the Packers." "Okay, well, how much?" And he says $1 million. And, I kind of do the, Sharapan thing. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. Well, when you get the money, let me know, bring it back, and we'll count it. And he goes, "Okay, hold on." And he goes like this and pops a bag right up on the counter. "I got it right here." Holy shit. I wasn't ready for that. All right, let me see. Unzip the bag, neatly wrapped up in the plastic wraps, still in the 10 dime straps. I said, "Wow, it's all here. All right, let me see. I got to count it." I go in the back. I tell the guys, I said, there's a guy out front. He's got 1.1. He wants to lay 2.5 with the Packers. And they're like, get the fuck out of here. He said, you can't be serious. I'm like, no, he's out there right now. Well, who is it? I said, I have no idea. He just showed up. It's 6:32. We just opened the book. I said, it could be Vince Lombardi's son. Who cares? He's got the cash. So, all right, count it. Make sure it's good. All right, we run over. Me and another guy through the money counters. Boom, 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 boom. Running, strapping. It's all good. Print the ticket, hand it to him. I'm like, you want to sit up in the VIP? You can get anything you want, whatever you want. And he goes, no, I'm not even going to watch the game. I just bet $1 million on it. I can't take it. And he leaves. 18 minutes later, somebody comes running in, a very familiar face who used to hang out in the book, out of breath, running to the counter. Davey, what? Calm down. What? I need the Steelers for $1 million. I need the Steelers for $1 million. We went to 2.5, lay 20. So it was plus 2.5 even money.
Oh,
well,
man.
it was the only even money. It was a Super Bowl, the biggest market. And, it took 18 minutes for him to find it. I don't know how. Word got around. His bag popped up on the counter. It looked a little different. It smelled a little different, but it was $1 million cash right there. And this money looked like it had been buried maybe for 18 years. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who picked it up, dropped it off, but there it was. And I go to the other guy. I'm like, you're not going to fucking believe this. I said, we got another $1 million. And we had to go run this money and count it and print his ticket so he could go off and do whatever he had to do, which I'm sure he was laying 2.5, minus 110 somewhere else, or money line or whatever he was doing. But yeah, so I've seen that, and I've seen $5 bets. The money isn't really, the money is your own bankroll. So those are different. It doesn't matter the amount to us. I'll become numb to money. It's sickening. But I was going to ask DP, I was going to ask Purdum, are the stories more just the bets, or do you want to know the people? Because the big thing about telling them, who they are, they don't mind telling you about the bets. They just don't want to tell you who they are. So if they could remain anonymous, I think there's the catch. There's the hook, and when I was at CG, I would, text you with, big bets or things going on to try to alert you so you could then go with it and run with it however you wanted. But a lot of times they didn't want to be named. They didn't want to be told. I mean, even if they win, there's no upside for most of those guys. But is the story the bet, or the story the person behind the bet? That's my question.
I would say both. I mean, obviously, if we could get to the bettor and they would to talk to us, and again, like Drew said, take us through what they went through and take us through the thinking behind the bet. That's always the interesting part to me. It'd be great, but a lot of the times we don't get that. And the story is just that this is one of the largest bets that was placed on this week's games, $100,000 on whatever. And that is very interesting to a lot of people. Some people don't care if it is from a sharp player. And as you know, the largest bets are very rarely from the sharpest players. They are, from casino VIPs, VIP players that get extended limits. That's not as interesting, obviously, compared to if a sharp guy were to bet. Yeah. So it's both is my answer, I guess, without being too much of a cop-out.
I've seen guys win $500,000 in the pit and come over and bet it on a game. They just won all this money. It doesn't mean anything to them. So half the time you'll see those $300,000, minus 10,000 on the money line plays. They're just picking up interest on money that they just won. They're not trying to win bets. Some of them don't even know what planet they're on. They're just having a good time. They talk to their host, come over to the book and go, what's the biggest favorite on the board? That's who I want, because it can't lose. That's right. Literally, there's no thought process behind some of those bets. So those stories aren't as interesting as far as the person. I mean, I've seen some guys that, have the bag planned. They just came from the bank. They wired it in, whatever. They come over and they thought it out. But I've also seen the guy make a huge score, picked up $500,000, running 6 hands, max bets on the blackjack table. He just went on a run, and he just scooped it all up and brought it over to the book. So you get it all in between, and it's crazy how many times I've seen it, and I go, nothing surprises me anymore. I don't know.
David, what do you think was really going on with the Tiger Woods $1 million guy?
He had a little bit of a past, for sure. Some people said he thought he was a runner for a bookmaker. I believe he was from Wisconsin, but we never really got much down into it. We did after everything kind of broke. We did look into it and didn't find much more information about the method and the reasoning behind his bet. But that was pretty wild. Then he comes back and what did he bet? Was it 10 grand that he bet again for him to win all four with the Grand Slam?
Yeah,
that was a rough.
It didn't pass the smell test. Did
you guys see the video of Tiger talking about it?
Yeah, video was great.
Yeah, it was a great bet.
That's what we call in the book. That's the give back. Like he had to come back and he hit the big bet once. He had to come back and maybe kind of just give a little bit back and go, okay, we're good. What about the Marco Robindale story? I mean, that story was that story you wrote about, a guy going around and betting during the rodeo, and the research involved in that. I mean, we had talked about that previously and put that all together. That story, is that a type of story that you'd like to write about bettors?
Oh, that was one of my favorite stories I've ever gotten to write, which was, riding in this car. The rodeo is in town in Las Vegas, and this sharp player who plays stale numbers on parlay cards. I said Jack was in that story too. Just riding around with him and seeing all that he has to go through. Those are my favorites. As when I mentioned earlier, the characters that come out of it, I love to hear those kind of stories and write those kind of stories.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. And the funny thing is I retweeted that the other day. I forget why, but and one of the directors from the sports book in Delaware reached out to me, and he's like, "Come on, you won more than you're admitting to. Go on. That mistake you made, that got covered up. You still took us for 200 grand that year." I'm like, "No, I didn't. I know you keep thinking that I took you for far more than I really did, but."
You showed me your spreadsheet. You showed me your spreadsheet. It was solid, but it wasn't 200 grand. That was because of the guy that overslept and didn't get his survivor pool picks into the circle. I asked, what was your biggest?
Right. Oh my God!
I know.
Or the people that use the Steelers or Ravens this week. They got killed on it. Dave, what David said there too is maybe not even watching the guy with the big bet, but the reasoning. I don't even care who the guy is. I don't care his backstory or anything. Knowing his reason. And it's funny because I'm cheating because I popped into the waiting room and looked. And so I get to kill Captain Jack on his, because your segues have been just beautiful tonight. They've been awesome. But it got me thinking about a podcast that I listened to, an interview podcast, and I do not remember who the bookmaker was, because there's a lot of bookmakers who have made it all over the world. It was either Pat Parada or maybe even Alfonso. And they were telling a story about a house player calling into, you talk about the Curacao thing, and I can't remember exactly how the story went, but the guy just said, this is how much money I want. And he said on the Yankees, because he couldn't say the why. And then they took this huge bet on the Yankees. And then the guy calls back and he's like, "Hey, who are the Yankees playing tonight?" Exactly. That was probably one of the best stories. That just blows your mind. These people, I think a lot of time there is no reason. They just want to gamble. They have more money than brains, like Jack said there.
Yeah. Hey, well, you bring that up, and it might be time for another segue. It might be time to bring in another guest. And it's the guy that hosts that podcast you're talking about, a very popular podcast with the very distinctual Be Better Bettors. It is my friend Spanky. Spanky, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show, whatever we want to call this, the party. Welcome to the party, Spanky.
Thanks so much for having me, fellas. I appreciate that, Jack.
So we might be pushing the limits of how many people you can fit on a screen at one time, but we're going to go through with it. And if there's any kind of lags or anything going on here, I apologize, but I'm sure
I do got to slide out. I was supposed to be home for supper 2 hours ago when you talked to me to say it.
You're going to be late.
Love you guys. Yeah, we'll let you have some bandwidth.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Jack. And
absolutely.
I'm going to turn on the YouTube and watch the rest of it.
Absolutely. Same
that.
Here. Take care.
Cheers,
Appreciate
boys.
that. Thanks, guys. All
Take care, guys.
Spanky, welcome, sir. You are definitely a force in this industry. You're a force on Twitter. I think there's some people at Bet Rivers tonight that might be cowering a little bit after what you did to them earlier tonight. For those that don't know, you can follow Spanky on Twitter at Spanky. He's got the eponymous name there on Twitter. So Spanky, how you been, and what have you been up to, and like what's going on right now with you? Like, you know, college basketball, I think, is pretty huge for you guys. You know, how's that going? Are you crushing it?
Yeah, we're doing real well. You know, this is the time of year when there's just so many sports happening, and it's hard for a bookmaker to keep up. So, you know, it's just everything's, you know, with the technology involved, and there's so many games. It's hard. So, you know, for us, we're getting down. We're trying to get down as much as possible, looking at the line moves and trying to get the best of the number. We've been doing real well, knock on wood. And, you know, it's a great time of year. There's teams that are playing that, you know, we've never even heard of. Yesterday, I think Dixie State was playing. I don't even know who that is. There's new teams that pop up every year. And there was another one, Talhorn. I forgot what it was, but there's these new teams. Tarleton, that's the one. Yeah, there it is. That's it. Exactly. Yeah, Tarleton. So I never even, you know, in my system, I got to put all these teams in because what we're doing is we're kind of parsing different, you know, lines from different places. And, you know, our system doesn't recognize Tarleton. It doesn't map it to anything. So I have to update my system to know, hey, wait a minute, you know, because not everybody puts up a game number. So we have to know exactly what everybody's dealing. And the system kind of gets funky if we don't do that. So a lot of maintenance and stuff. I do a lot of coding. You know, I got a great team. My staff is doing most of the betting. Luke runs the desk. Chinese Mike does the figures. And, you know, we're just chugging away. It's you know, it's a busy time of year, and it's good to be busy.
Good. You know, I have to chuckle at Chinese Mike, who is not Chinese. And that's also not meant to be a slur in any way. It's can you give the example of why he's called Chinese Mike?
You know, every time people, you know, Mike is such a common name. So, you know, I don't think there's any Mike that you just call him Mike in this business. You know, when we were at the M, there was Big Mike and Little Mike. That's just how it is. And there's you gotta attach something to a Mike. And Chinese is 2 syllables. He's really Vietnamese, but that's just too long. You know what I mean? So you kind of just call him, you know, and then people just started naming him Chinese Mike. And he just started saying, yeah, I'm Chinese Mike. Like, he didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? As long as you just knew who you were talking about. And, you know, that's what it comes down to. But, yeah, it's just, you know, you just want to recognize who everybody is. Like, even on, like, my cell phone, you know, I don't, you know, it's not like, you know, my plumber, his name is just, you know, his name is Paul, but I don't call him Paul. I call him Plumber Paul. And then, or Christmas Tree Light Justin. Or, you know, you just have these names that you associate with what they do. You know, it's because these common names, you know, you have to attach them to, you know, what they're there for. And Chinese Mike, I don't think there's any Chinese Mike in the business. So, you know, everybody, when they hear Chinese Mike, they know who it is.
Spanky, you have a guy that makes your Christmas lights and puts up your Christmas lights?
I do. Yes. You know, I can't climb that ladder anymore, Dave. It's you know what I mean? If I fall, it's all over. And I don't like heights. And so I got a group, you know, I just have a company that does it, and they put up the lights on my house. Yeah.
Like Justin.
Yeah, his name is Justin. He does a great job too. I call him Christmas Tree Light Justin. I'm like, you know. So.
That's way too many syllables, Spank.
I know it is, but you know what? Yeah, you're right. It's Chris. I think they call him Christmas Justin, maybe, but yeah, you're right, Dave. It's
light Justin. You know. All right, so I want to get back to some of these questions that are in the chat. I've done a poor job of kind of keeping the audience engaged. We've just had too much fun interacting with each other here. So for those of you who are in the chat, thanks for hanging in there. We got about 350 people watching live right now. There's going to be countless more that watch this on the replay. If you're watching this right now, you can do me a favor and you can hit the like button. That lets YouTube know that this guy is actually producing content that I like, and that helps them kind of promote me a little bit more. So if you know, that's all you need to do for me is just like, and if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. But I appreciate it. So let's go back to a question here that's in the chat, and I'm sorry, Dave Sharapan, that I just blocked you out for the picture.
That's fine.
So with this extreme growth in the industry and the new respect it's getting in the mainstream, do you think betting will be close to something like stock market with respect to coverage? I'm going to start with Dave Purdum on this one. get his thoughts, but I think we can each kind of give a quick opinion on this as we go around.
Absolutely. If it's not already getting as much, or if not more coverage than the stock market, it certainly will in the future.
Okay.
Sweet.
Dave Sharapan, what do you think on this one?
I would say it already is getting more. And I think I've talked about this with so many people that want to like get into this business and things like that. This is something you can invest in. You can invest in stocks and Bitcoin. You don't see anything. It's just numbers on a screen. But you invest in sports and you get to watch what you invested in like a couple hours later, right in front of you. So I think that I obviously the growth is the ceiling is high. We just have to get there. And I don't know if that's going to be that's what's everybody's best interest. Let's put it that way.
Spanky, got any thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard. The stock markets, we're talking billions and billions. So, the sports market is never going to get that high. It's just small time, it's peanuts. But I think the interest is there, and it'll get some type of coverage. But I just think that, when it comes to liquidity, you can never compare something like an equity stock market to a sports market. It's just night and day.
Fair enough. I agree with that. I've had people that deal with a lot with the equity markets that kind of scoff when I say, the sports betting market, that's going to become. They're like, no, it is night and day. But I think it's going to keep on moving along. I think I think we're going to start to have some of that same market efficiency theory. It can come into play, efficient market theory, come into play with sports betting and sports markets more than we have in the past. But I do think it's continuing to grow. We've already seen, there's the Jim Cramer types that are already out there for sports betting, right? That are, just buy, sell. We're going to see a lot more of that, unfortunately. But we're also going to see like CNBC level type of journalism when it comes to sports betting markets. And, I think we're starting to see that as well. So I think it's moving along, and it should be interesting to watch. Okay, some other questions here we got going on. By the way, if you're tuning in, if you're hanging in there with us, I got more guests coming, and it's some big names. It's really big names. So this is getting better, and not that it hasn't been great already. I mean, Drew and Andy and David and Dave and Spanky. I mean, it's just been phenomenal so far. I think everyone has enjoyed this, and if you have enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Let's go back to some questions here. Spanky, do you want to talk more about the Bet Rivers issue? Or do you want to?
No, listen, that wasn't even a bet that I placed. A guy sent. I get these messages all the time. So a guy sends me, Spanky, look, I'm limited to 43 cents. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'll tweet it out if you want. It's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're in. I don't know what you guys think, but 43 cents. This is just pardon my French, it's fucking crazy. Like, it's nuts. You can't. This is America, and this is. I don't care what anybody says. If you can't take a nickel on something, don't hang it. It's just real simple. And I don't understand how this is becoming the norm. And I think that there's somebody. I would like somebody to step in to try to change this norm, because this is not. In Las Vegas, where domestically, where this business has grown legally, and in the New York and in the East Coast, in Pittsburgh and Philly and all these, where this business, just imagine you call a local guy and say, yeah, I'm sorry, you only can have 40 cents on a game. It's nuts. Like it's a conversation that should never be happening. And I see Dave laughing, and it's crazy. Like it's funny, right, Dave? Like how can this happen? Like. This is a business that we've been in for so long, and for the Europeans to come in and think that it's acceptable to give a citizen that pays taxes 43 cents on a game is just it's mind-boggling. Like I can't believe it.
Spank, I don't get it. And I've been in the books now in Vegas for 16, 17 years, and going back offshore. I mean, like offshore was. When we did it, we like I was saying earlier before you came to the show, we did it because this was the only thing we were doing. We were booking games just like you're betting games. You don't have anything, you may have investments and stuff to fall back on, but you're trying to win every bet. And as the book, it's a game of cat and mouse. Sometimes you beat me to a number, sometimes I beat you to a number, but we got to still take action. And it's a gentleman's agreement. And if you do something that we don't like as the book, we're going to say, hey, Spank, listen, don't double pop us. You can bet the game. Give me 2 minutes. If I don't move it again, you can have it again. But if I do move it, or you play the game, don't play the first half. Let me move the first half. I mean, just understand how we're working. We're not trying to discourage action. So it's pretty discouraging to see what's going on and getting limited to 43 cents. I'm with you. Nickel's my thing. Sometimes props, if I told you guys, bettors, the guys, because there's a lot of now that it's legal everywhere, nobody loses. I don't know if you paid attention on Twitter, but everyone wins. So, now as the books, you're really up against it. But maybe prop markets, we could agree to 300. You can bet over Brady passing yards for 300. Let me move it. You can bet it again. You can bet it 8 times. I don't give a shit. That's what we're supposed to do. Bet it until I get the number right. Maybe I got to move it more to second or third time. But we're giving somebody 43 cents on like a golf future or something like that. It doesn't make sense. So what's going on? Like Alfonso Straffen and Alf is great. I mean, Alf was, he did it in Costa Rica, and him and I bonded and had some great conversations because he's been in a lot of those places that Spanky's been in, I've been in. We've seen him taking bets. I don't know what's going on here. And yes, there should be some advocacy group, something to happen that maybe speak up. But right now, this is the way it is. So I think we're going to kind of see some separation from books, maybe. I mean, if it's too much and it gets consolidated and limits the market, I know who's thriving, and ain't nobody living in the United States, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, I'll add my 2 cents. I've said it before. It doesn't add up because if you take it from one sense and say, okay, the sports books need to protect their bottom line, that's why they can't book anyone who's sharp. Then you ask them, well, how many people are sharp? And they say, or no, you ask them, how many people percentage do you limit? And they go, just 1 or 2%. So you take from that, okay, so there's only 1 or 2% that are sharp. Well, that means that if there's only 1 or 2% that are sharp, then why can't you take their action? And they go, well, they might bet huge. Spanky might come in and just throttle us with 6-figure bets. All right, well, what about respectable limits? It's almost insulting sometimes when you get a limit that's 43 cents, but even more than that, like $27 or something like that. Look, if a guy's going to take $500 bet from me, I'll be like, all right, you're not going to take much, but if you're at least going to take that, good. I'll place my $500 bet with you. But when you're a multi-billion-dollar company and you're not willing to take, more than pennies from anyone that you think is sharp, and trust me, it's more than 1 or 2% that you think are sharp. You're painting with such a broad brush that you're basically telling the world that we're scared of all this action. You're in the wrong business. You're in the wrong, and they are in the wrong business. They don't want to be in the sportsbook business. They want to be in the casino business. Yeah. They want to be dealing slot machines to people. They don't want to be dealing sports. And I don't think they're going to be dealing sports in a few years. This is their way into this market. Once online casinos come, now that we're got the appetite whetted for online gaming in this country, the online casinos will take over, and then sports betting will be just like it has been in Vegas. It'll be an amenity on the side, and they're not going to really want to take the full action.
I've called it a Trojan horse, and I've heard it that it's the way into the gambling world, and that's what they're using it for. There's books that'll take bets, and there's books that have to take bets to continue to thrive and survive. And there's too many that don't. And talk about being painted with a broad brush. I've been in the books now. I know what goes on. Reports may get run, and this is what's going on maybe more with, guys are moving numbers for the United States in Malta, in wherever they're at. You're just a number on a screen. There's no personal touch. And 2, you beat the closing line 3 times. You get 1, 2, 3 times. You're put into a bucket. You want to talk about buckets, Jack? You're put into a bucket that you're limited, and that's it. There's no discussion. You may have gotten lucky 3 times betting $100 a game. That's it. We don't care who you are. We don't care how much your volume is. It can be 3 bets and you're out.
Yeah, let me add to that. That's a great point, Dave. I think that the one thing is this is a business where volume is everything as a sports book. You want to write as much as possible. And I think the way a lot of these guys have it with the subject to approval, the spin out delay thing, they're trying to stifle bets. They're trying to wait. Oh, let me just check to see if this bet is okay. Where instead you want to be aggressive. You want to have an auto mover and you want to be able to profile customers. So you just keep writing the bets. You set certain limits for certain customers, but you just keep writing, and then you move automatically. So you protect yourself. Only one customer gets the number's moved, and then whatever the new number is, anybody can have at it. That's the right way, in my opinion, and I think Dave would agree with me, to be able to write as much business as possible. You still protect yourself. You need an auto mover. You need to profile your customers correctly. You can't have a subject to approval and get nervous every time somebody tries to place a bet. This is 2020. There's no longer a time where, if you're calling a clerk, hold 675, you know what I mean? Those days are gone. You can't hold a game, check the board, make sure everything's got to be automated. You let people just keep firing and the lines move automatically. When the lines are moving automatically, and you profile guys. So if I bet a game, they might move 13 cents. Somebody else might bet a game, they might move 15 cents. He's sharper than me. Some guy bets a game and won't even move. You see what I'm saying? So whatever. But you got to be able to do everything automatically, auto moving the lines, so that the business just keeps getting written, and that's it. The number's there to take a hit. And unfortunately, bookmakers today are not of that mindset. They're on defense instead of on offense. Everything's like, oh my God, wait a minute, this guy's going to kill me. And it doesn't have to be like that. It's a bet. You write a bet, you move the number. 110 is a very powerful thing, and I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
How do you battle the bots? That's what I want to know. And Jack, we can shelf that question if you got somebody coming in. But I'd like to discuss these betting bots, because a lot of guys are ahead of the books, technology-wise, knowledge-wise, and smart-wise. So if you can answer that now, that's fine. Jack, if you want to step in and maybe get to someone else, if you got them, that's fine too.
I can answer it briefly if you want. Jack, up to you.
Go ahead, Frank.
Like I just said it. With the bots, I have bots. It doesn't. As long as you write one bet to one number, that doesn't matter, because the bots, your system is going to have people, and once somebody bets, the number automatically moves. So if the line is 5, only one guy's laying 5 minus 10. The next guy's got to lay 5 minus 22. You see what I'm saying? So the bots are going to be competing against each other. One number, one bet to a number, and then the number just keeps moving. And that's what Chris does. That's what Pinnacle does. Everything's auto moving. If anybody's watching a screen, you see Chris goes from 5 flat to 5 minus a quarter. And then about a minute later, when they get to it, they might adjust it to 6, maybe 6 dog 15, whatever it is. But they're just moving. Everything's just in motion. Move. None of this subject to delay and all this other shit. Oh shit, let me check Pointspread and all these guys using guys like us as a line service to make sure, I'm gonna move the odds on this game because we're not in line with the market. Come on. You know what I mean? You write the bet. Right. That's how I've seen the best in the world. And I've been to all these places, Costa Rica, and I've seen the best of the best. They want to just write the business. That's how you make money, and that's how you could pit sharps against each other. Write the business. Minus 110 will work for you.
Yeah. No, I agree totally. We have somebody coming in right now. They're in the green room, and they are a legit legend in this space. They've probably forgotten more about sports betting than this collective group on this screen right now will ever know. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to bring to you here on the Sports Bettors Talk Show, Mr. Roxy Roxborough, live from Phuket, Thailand. Roxy,
hey, there he is.
What do you got there, man?
What is that? I've got dead guy ale, and believe me, when I have to wake up before noon, I feel like a dead guy.
That's great. Roxy, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
It's an honor to have you on here with us. We were just talking about, we were lamenting about how it's tough for sharp bettors to get down and the limits that we're seeing. Did you ever think in this business that this would be what it would be like in the year 2020, that we'd have proliferation of sports betting and not a proliferation of actually wanting to take liquidity in this market?
Well, it was like that in 1975, 1980 too. I mean, what happens is scaling sports betting has always been the harder part. To me, it's been harder than winning. I think there's a lot of people that can figure out how to win at low levels, and to scale it is, a lot of sharp minds end up moving into finance. But to scale it's always been an issue. Now, I would have thought, though, there would have been a few heroes, just in numbers, in the amount of licenses that people have applied for. I thought there would have been a few heroes that would step up, but there aren't. And for all the abuse that Las Vegas has got over the years of not taking a bet, it's still the best place in the United States to get a bet. By and large, they more or less have rules on what they'll take, and they stay by it. I know that's what Spanky was talking about, the bots and how everything is automated and moves. And that's certainly, if you're not moving automated, you're not with it, because there's just too many things to book right now. But from a player standpoint, what you really need to know, more so now than ever, is what is your second and third bet? So you've laid -6, -105. What's your next bet? Can you lay 17? Can you lay 12? Or do you actually want to lay a worse number and take a plus? So if you've laid 6, do you really want to lay 6.5 and take a dime? In other words, you really have to know what your second and third bets are, because that's the way you scale. And a lot of times you end up against the money if you think that a half a point is worth something different than somebody else. And that's not all cut and dried what everybody thinks these moves are worth. And I think that the challenge today, especially with betting against other bots like on exchanges, is trying to figure out where their bot will go and how much you have to give them. So we could talk about exchanges for forever, but the beauty of exchanges is it gives you access to odds you can't get anywhere else in the world, even though it's the sharpest guys making the market, and you are not getting the best price in the world, but you're getting the best price that you can get, because you don't have access to scrape every place in the world. And so once you get used to the fact that you don't have to have the best price, you just have to have the best price for you, it changes your world.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Roxy, so you're in Thailand, and it is 9:43 in the morning, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was waiting for right there. And
I'm chasing it down with an Irish. Using a dead guy to chase an Irish coffee down. That's for I see you guys have really knocked yourselves out on your studios here.
I'm in the kitchen.
How long you guys been doing this Zoom stuff? We got Sharapan's coming out of his kitchen. Purdum's got the green wall. We're like the green zone in Baghdad. Cantor's out in his bedroom.
Minimalistic.
I'm in my office.
Purdum's at the DMV.
Nice art, Spanky.
Thank you, brother.
Fellas, I'm gonna let when you're the dumbest guy on the thing, it's a good time to top out. So I'm gonna top out and let you guys talk. Roxy, good to see you. Spanky, Dave, Jack, talk to you soon.
Bye,
Thanks.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm going to change this. I'm going to take this over for the next couple of minutes. I want to hit on one thing about nicknames. We're talking about stories, and the consigliere was asking Purdum, I think specifically about, are stories good because of the people or the amount? And I like the answers there. But we don't build the colorful characters anymore because a lot of them want to be anonymous, and I get that. But harking back to Spanky and Chinese Mike, who's Vietnamese, I love that. In Las Vegas, we used to have all kinds of nicknames that could never be, people couldn't accept them now. It wouldn't be politically correct. There was a guy, Too Drunk Dave. It was a play on Ed Too Tall Jones. We used to call him Drunk Dave. He found out about it. He changed it to Too Drunk Dave. So he was Too Drunk Dave. We had Black Alan because we had so many Allens. And Allens, on the phones they say, this is Alan. the phone bookmakers. He says, "Gee, which Allen? Black Allen. You ought to know. I don't have black enough for you." So that was Black Allen. Couldn't do that today. We had Marty the Jew. That's how he introduced himself. We had Indian Joe Finesilver. It turned out that he was half Greek and half Jewish, but he called himself Indian Joe Finesilver, the name he made up. And he once faked his obituary. He had an obituary written about him so he could escape a lot of debts, and he came back into town 2 years later.
Oh, my God. Oh, man. Amazing. That's funny.
Hey, Roxy, I've always had a question on, back then you had these books and they weren't like right on the strip. They were kind of like off to the side and here and there. Like, how much did you lose just trying to drive between shops, trying to get money down? Wasn't that the hardest part? Is like, you got to park your car, you got to run inside, you got to run back out.
Well, surprisingly, there weren't a lot of shoppers for the stuff that I was looking at. You could drive from Churchill Downs to Del Mar, which was in North Las Vegas. Back then, the freeway didn't go all the way through, and maybe not miss a number. We used to operate payphone to payphone, though, and we always had partners. So you'd call a payphone in a bar close to a sports book, and that's how you'd get the bet down, and that person would walk in. It was zoned in downtown Las Vegas that all the books were on East First, so you could walk from the Hollywood to the Derby to the Saratoga to the Paddock pretty easily. But illegal bookmakers or street bookmakers were a big part of Las Vegas action up until about the time that baseball went to a dime line, because the federal tax had been lowered. When it was lowered at 2%, illegal bookmakers could still offer dime lines in baseball, and legal books couldn't, unless they wanted to book for free. And then when it went down to a quarter of 1%, you had it sort of was the death of the street bookies or the phone bookies. But phone bookies were a really integral part. Legendary Las Vegas bookmakers like Fifi, who's still with us from upstate New York, Daryl Hines from Oklahoma, Matt Marcus, who actually was the front for the IRS and went around books passing out business cards. He was a street bookmaker. Yeah. So it was a much tougher business back then, but I didn't think we were trying to win 10 to 20% ROI. We were looking for a lot of offbeat stuff. So we chopped a lot of bad numbers out of state, and we didn't care that much about getting paid. Today, people just assume they're getting paid. And we didn't assume we were going to get paid. So we needed a much higher ROI.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. Hey, there's somebody else that just decided they want to kind of join in on this party.
Good.
I'm going to add him in here. Rufus Peabody needs no introduction probably, but he decided he wanted to come in and say hello as well.
I'm just here to listen to Roxy. This is a rare treat. It's a
rare treat.
I don't know if Roxy told you, but I went all the way to Thailand to visit him once.
He did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's dedication.
I thought one thing about Rufus is that I thought, wow, I can never do this life anymore. But he was traveling around Southeast Asia, and he had a backpack and a laptop, and that was it.
That was it. I think I had like I had 2 pairs of shorts maybe. Like it was as minimalist as you can get.
Yeah. And I said, what's your biggest problem moving around Asia so light like that? You have any problems? Only one problem: laundry.
I felt underdressed around Roxy. I mean, Roxy's always looks sharp.
He's the best dressed man in the business, definitely.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, Roxy, got a question for you. Patrick Everson actually put it into the chat here.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Lem Banker's passing? You know, one of the things, you're a legend here, and you reach legend status, and you have to sort of be the person to comment on other legends passing. So you want to take a minute or two and tell us what you remember about Lem Banker?
I remember Lem. He had this Benz convertible. He used to drive up and down the strip. His original place were Lem. That was in the mid 70s, and then he had another one later that I think his wife had, and the plates were Banker. And he's a flamboyant character. He was the guy that media would love because he always spoke, and he had the gold chains, and he worked out, and he just looked like the pejorative Las Vegas gambler. And he was gracious with media. Now, how was he that good of a handicapper? I'd say he was an average handicapper, but he did have people calling him from around the country, asking him to bet, and he always knew where the best numbers were, which he could save for himself. Because, I mean, if somebody asked you to lay 3 and you can lay 2.5, I mean, if it's your partner, of course, you tell them it's 2.5. But I mean, if it's somebody asking you to do a favor, it sends you money from out of state, you lay the 2.5, and he gets 3, everybody's happy.
He took 3. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a pretty good source of income for quite a while. Yeah.
Wow. Dave Sharapan, did you ever come across Lem Banker?
I did. It was very late. And like, you know, I've come across so many of these guys. I had the pleasure of, you know, I was at the Venetian the first time Roxy came to the counter, and I was like, he was at the end of the counter, and I was writing like a $10 A-teamer. I'm like, hey, buddy, hold on. You got to go over here. I got to go. And they're like, where are you going? I'm like, I got to go. And I ran down to the counter and I started talking to Roxy, and that created a, you know, they almost told me to go home that day because I did not stop talking to Roxy. They're like, Sheriff, are you going to write any more tickets? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll just punch out. I'm good. But no, Lem was, he was later in life, and he was kind of just hanging out. I don't know. Maybe he was shopping numbers. I don't know what he was doing, but cool guy. My experience with him was great. And then when I found out who he was and his history, I was like, wow. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I grew up in the business around bookmakers, around bettors, around guys picking up, dropping off, all this stuff. So it was a normal way of life for me, but I always respected the guys above me and, you know, learned the business right from them. Just hanging out. I mean, I was like C in Bronxdale. I was the little kid, just literally the kid hanging around. He never went away. And it just turned into a life, which is kind of fun. But yeah, Lem was a good guy. He was a good character, you know, for the whole story of Las Vegas.
Yeah, I remember him. There was a sports betting documentary. I forget which one. But their interview with him, he's out at his pool, and he's just got his dumbbells going up and down. He's only 80-something years old at this point. You know, he's got gold chains, you know, armless shirt. Yeah, he was a character.
Waiting for Rufus to make that appearance like that at some point.
You're going to be waiting a while.
Rufus, did you ever run in with Lem Banker? Probably not, right?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
No,
you know, there's been so many legends that have kind of passed through that Vegas scene, and you know, look, there'll be more. You know, this is a business that's all about the personalities, and there's been a lot of great personalities in the past, and there's going to be in the future. Roxy, I got a question for you though. When you look at what's going on today with sports betting, and I remember you were on VSiN back about 3-4 years ago, before legalization, and you kind of predicted everything to a T. You said, you know, look, the casinos want to get involved. The European companies that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years are going to want to come over here and do it. They're going to want to do it their way because they believe that is best. And then the state lotteries are going to want to get a piece. And then the taxes are going to be ratcheted up because the state governments think they can make more from sports betting than they can. And then the tribal casinos will come in and they'll want a piece too, and that'll muck it all up. And you were right. Where are we going from here? You know, you told us the future. Where does it go from here?
A lot of consolidation. Well, one thing we know is taxes on sports betting won't go down. So they'll become a line item in the budget, and over time, when states need more money, they look at all sorts of the gambling component, and will raise taxes on the sports betting wins. But also, we'll see there's way too many players. So if you look at New Jersey and Colorado, where there's just too many players. So there'll be consolidation. Now, some of that one thing I wasn't right about, or I didn't see coming, some of this consolidation was going to happen before some of these players got to the United States. So you had companies in Australia and Europe were consolidating and then putting their money towards the United States platform. So I didn't see that. So there's been consolidation, but there'll be a lot of consolidation. One of the problems with sports betting is you have a couple of players like DraftKings and FanDuel that are playing actually at a much higher level than everybody else. You know, they're the Ubers and Teslas of the business. They have a plan, but nobody knows what it is. But maybe the plan is just to buy up everything. It reminds me of when brokerages decided to be banks and just hold everybody's money. We don't know exactly what the plan was, but it turns out the plan was just to hoard all the assets. And they're playing at a different level because they're not bookmaking operations. They're just businesses. And I can't read their future. So I think that's the real monkey wrench for reading the future.
Fair enough. I want to pivot a little bit here to election betting because, Rufus, you talked a lot about election betting this year. In fact, we had someone actually just ask a question in the chat, and it's probably not a question you directly want to answer, but hey, it's the internet, it's chat. People ask bold questions.
I'll say this. Wait, I'll say this. Like, okay. Roxy's very good at predicting the future, and he's living on a private island in Thailand. I do not yet have a private island.
Fair point. So the reason I'm pivoting to this is because Roxy has done election betting way back. And Roxy, you want to talk because you were on the other side of the counter with a lot of the election betting back in the day. Obviously, there wasn't a legal sports book that took election betting in the U.S., but you want to talk about some of your experience with election betting?
I want to talk to Rufus about it too, but I'll just say that I was a street bookmaker. For those that don't know it, it's a euphemism for illegal bookie during the Reagan-Carter election. And that one we really got plunked on because things started moving so fast. It doesn't take much for elections to move fast and in a hurry. The polling is so much better now, and polling was better this year than 4 years ago, but they just keep realizing there's people they're missing in polling. That's a problem pollsters have. But things can move really fast. To bring it forward to this year, the Republicans won every close GOP seat. The Republicans won every close House seat, all of them. All the ones that were leaning, more than 20, the GOP won them all, which means that the pollsters had them close, but they didn't get the way the public was moving. They didn't catch it. And then, in hindsight, elections are the easiest thing to read, but they're very difficult before. They're not, this last election was competitive in the betting world. There'll be a lot of elections where it won't be competitive at all. But the one thing that's clear about this last election, and Rufus can speak to this too, because I don't know if he's got paid on his bets yet. I don't doubt that it'll get paid, but the majority of the money in the world has not been paid out. And the sports books have abysmal rules. And some of them have changed it on the go, which I find unacceptable. Like in March and April and in June, they actually changed the rules. So, and nobody has a decent rule about who they're going to pay, or if they did, they've abandoned it. So I would be interested to see what Rufus, if he's got paid on all his bets yet.
Well, Roxy, that was certainly a concern for me when I was betting. I had to basically estimate that what the percentage chance is that Biden wins the election, but I thought it was going to be opposite. Well, no, Biden wins the election, but then Trump comes in with the courts and somehow gets it, and so it was definitely a concern for me. Mm-hmm. I'll say this though, I the day before the election, I basically deposited like another $40,000 into Bet Online in Bitcoin. because there was some stuff that I could still rebet enough. And I won all those bets, but I'm down versus if I had just kept it in Bitcoin because I can't get it out yet.
Well, that's the ultimate. What is that? The time cost of Bitcoin. Right now, the time cost of cash has been almost nothing for the last 10 years, right? But the time cost of Bitcoin, well, that throws a different light on the subject.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. I made a kind of an offhand tweet about it, and I think people thought I was being serious. And I said, when will your election bets get paid? Well, it depends on what the current price of Bitcoin is. But I was just kind of off the cuff, but it's been fairly true. There's a question here, Roxy, and I'll just kind of throw it out here. I'm not sure if this is something, I don't quite understand it. Its word is that Dr. Mike Orkin wrote his Pointspread analyzer at your request. True, and how heavily did you use it? I'm not sure exactly what that is. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does. Mike Orkin was a Cal Berkeley statistics professor, and he and I joined forces, and he did a lot of my probability work in the early days, in the 80s. And his Pointspread analyzer was our first stab at putting rudimentary data in a program to come up with NFL spreads. We really didn't need help in the NFL spreads, but we needed help in the college, but we tested it in the NFL and later became the basis for a system I was using to rate college basketball teams because there were just too many of them. So yes, Professor Mike's still with us. He's a great character. He's worth his own show. He worked on the data team that got Juan Corona, the guy who was accused of convicted of murdering 26 migrant workers. He got a murder conviction overturned because of data. He also ended up working on
that was a big dog. I don't know what the price was for that, but that was a big dog.
When Juan Corona found out that he was going to be moved to another jail because he was going to get a new trial, he was a little upset because he liked his job in the laundry. So he also did some seminal work on what constitutes a lap dance because of the strippers, because the state moving it against strip clubs in Oakland, and how close you could get to be considered sex or a lap dance. So he's a very interesting character, and he would make a great guest, by the way. Yes, we did collaborate on that. I mean, good question, by the way.
I'll use that old line. I'll know it when I see it. Adam Chernoff has a good question here. Adam, he's definitely someone that might be a future sports bettor talk show guest if I ever do this again. Adam asks, as someone who stumbled across the betting inside Vancouver mining companies a couple of years ago, I'm curious if Roxy has any good stories from his days booking on Granville and in the city. Roxy, we're talking Vancouver, Canada. I have not heard you talk Vancouver, Canada before, so I don't think I'm rehashing anything that's a tired story.
No, you're not. But I don't want to monopolize this podcast because I want to hear from Spanky. And I've actually learned a lot before the first hour and a half. Now I'm just rehashing stories. But I was a bookmaker in a mining stock company, and I only opened Friday for 90 minutes. And I had customers who were guaranteed to pay because they had accounts at this mining firm called Cantor Investments. And I just booked the NFL only. And I was open 90 minutes a week. And it worked out great. Plus I knew which way they were going, and I could take unlimited money because I had 2 days to get rid of what I didn't want or move numbers and everything. The deal was too good to be true. And then of course, it was too good to be true until the police told me, Roxborough, this is the second time. So the third time, you're going to have to be working from inside. So I moved to Las Vegas.
Many people follow that same path, right? I mean, that's the old Benny Binion path. That's you know, you get busted a few times, and okay, go do it in Vegas.
Las Vegas and Bangkok remind me a lot, because there's a lot of people that in these two cities that were chased out of everywhere else, and Las Vegas was their last shot, and Bangkok's got desperados from everywhere, arms dealers, corrupt finance guys, boiler room operators. It seems to be the last refuge of the world's desperados.
My kind of crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, now I know why my parents were concerned about me moving to Las Vegas to become a bettor.
Hey, fellas, I have a question that I think maybe a lot of people probably have, or I know that I've had, because before I was on, you know, the backside of the counter, and still now, I still make bets, but, you know, I got a family, I got 3 kids. I don't bet nearly as much as I did. But
wait, why not? Don't you want to support them?
well, yeah, I mean, you're right. You got to have a side hustle. There's no doubt, because the books, you know, they haven't figured out the scale for knowledge and time and pay. That's a whole nother issue. Why does the relationship feel, you know, adversarial between the professional bettor, the guy winning money, whomever it is, in the other side of the counter? I was raised and made my bones in the business in a place where, listen, we were all, you know, it was a professional relationship. We would have dinner sometimes. We would talk on the phone. We knew each other's kids. You know, I had guys tell me all the time, here's a little extra for the kids. And the same thing happened in the holidays. It was more of a professional relationship where you're trying to beat me, I'm trying to beat you. That's fine. But, I mean, you guys, you know, getting thrown out, Spanky, we've seen the videos. I mean, I don't even know how you go out of the house. You go in a place, you're there 3 hours, 8 hours, you got to go. So why is it just me, or is that on your end too? Do you feel that as much now than you ever did, or is it going to get better? I don't know. Start somewhere. Spank, I guess you can start first.
You know, it's a great question, and I don't, you know, I'm of the mindset. I'm just like you, Dave, and you know, I was brought up kind of towards the end of the old school, where the bookmaker bettor relationship doesn't have to be adversarial. It's, you know, it's a friendly relationship. Till this day, the people that book me directly, the few that do, I'm very good friends with them. And I have nothing, you know, if they ever have a mistake, I will never bet a mistake. I will call them up and say, hey, listen, I think this line is off. If there's an injury, I share information with bookmakers. I would tell them, hey, listen, I think this guy might not be playing. And that's just how it is. And, you know, you get a courtesy bet sometimes not, but you do that so that you could last long. And I think that bettors today don't really realize, you know, we always will need, as a professional, we need the bookmakers so much more than they need us. And that's just, it's just a fact. And, you know, I never, ever want to, you know, guys that book me, I appreciate it, because I can't, you know, without bookmakers, without places to bet in, I can't operate. So I need bookmakers to be there. And I understand and I recognize that, you know, guys are always looking for every little edge, but there's times in which you got to just take a step back. You can't go for the jugular. Me and Roxy talked about this when he was on my podcast. You know, you got to bleed them out slowly, and you got to give them NFL work. There's so many different ways to appease a bookmaker, to show respect, and to be able to say, okay, listen, you know, most likely I'm going to win in the long run, but you know what? You do this, you do that for me. There's a relationship there, and I think that's lost today because of the technology involved, because a lot of people are only betting automated. Everything's automated. You know, you don't walk up to the counter anymore. Everything's over the internet. Everything's there. So I think that's going to just continue to be lost, unfortunately. However, till this day, I have major bookmakers calling me. Even on betting automated, they call me, they text me. They'll say, hey, can you use something on this? Can you use something on that? So we still help each other out. And I'm proud, you know, to be one of those guys, because I've built that. That's how I built my reputation, to be able to work with a bookmaker, to help him out, because I am so thankful for guys that are able to book me directly. And because without them, I wouldn't be able to provide for my family.
Rufus, your turn.
Okay. Well, I was educated in this industry by the people that Roxy educated at Las Vegas Sports Consultants, Kenny White, Tony Sinisi, Coach O'Brien, or no, Dan O'Brien, and then Coach. What was Coach's? I'm not even remembering Coach's actual name.
John Harper. John Harper.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He was just Coach. But I mean, I feel like I wasn't there for the old days with Roxy betting. Well, Roxy's little gambling pool on what the next airplane like to land would be, what airline, where apparently he had contacts in the control tower. And this is what I heard, at least. I don't know. We need some of these stories, Roxy, later. But I'll say this: like, I don't think like I have very good relationships with a lot of bookmakers, and there are other bookmakers that where, I mean, limit me or won't take my action. The William Hills of the world. But even back in 2008, when I was starting, there were bookmakers where the relationship was not nearly as good. I mean, I still remember my first Super Bowl out in Vegas. I had like all my life savings, and I was going around, and I got to the Rio, I think it was Friday, the Friday after the conference championship games. I'm one of the first people to see the prop sheet, and they had like under 3.5 field goals lined at plus 130 or something insane. I mean, back then the numbers were a lot softer back then. But it wasn't a mistake because I mean they had a lot of other numbers that were really, really off. And I tried to bet it. They moved the line from they reject it and move the line 60 cents on me. And so I call up my friend Jason Bean, who worked at LVSC, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like I was like pissed. I was like, they can't do that, can they? And he was like, here's what you do. You park it at Bill's, which is now the Cromwell, and park there. Go bet the bets that you want. Go to like 2 different ticket writers at each place. Do this loop of all the Caesars. Well, then it was the Harris properties, and I did that, and I ended up like getting. There's like 3 bets that I really, really liked, and I ended up getting like 20, like over 2,000 on each of them, which was a lot to me at the time. Like I was not a limit bettor at that point. So that was, I don't know, that story doesn't directly relate exactly, but it's, I mean, I do think even in the quote good old days, not everybody there were bookmakers that were that I guess treated sharp bettors as with a lot more respect than others.
Roxy, you booked games, you bet, you did both. I mean, isn't it, I don't know, it's a game of cat and mouse, but like if you're beating me, I got to get better. I mean, like, you know, I read Chris's book. He had to hire you. I mean, he said, listen, give me the numbers. Like I'll take you on, but I don't think it's an automatic throw out. There has to be a happy medium, no?
I'm not sure now. Bookmakers want to scale up their business too. So outside of Wynn, Westgate, how many places, South Point, name other places where you can actually go up and negotiate a limit, because everybody has so many satellites. And what happens is you can't scale up your business by cutting deals, you know, or it's going to be all automated anyway. It's going to go the way that Pinnacle and Chris do it now.
That's why I'm getting into media.
I mean, I don't think they're all automated.
But I don't see – everybody wants to scale up. Bettors want to scale up. It's hard. Books want to scale up so they can make more money. And the way to do it is through automation. So I think you'll always have some relationships. I think, you know, you can have a good relationship with the Westgate. You might not agree with everything they do, but I think they're really fair. I'd say the same about South Point. And
Circa's doing a good job.
Circa,
Guys at Circa's doing it for sure.
Yeah. When Johnny was at Wynn, I'm not sure what direction they're going in. When Johnny was at Wynn, he was pretty flexible. You don't always like his rulings, and Rufus knows that. But basically,
I know that.
in the end, he was trying to do what he thought was best, and he wouldn't let you make a bet. And I think that's all you can ask for a bookmaker. He's got to protect his property first, and then he's got to be fair to people who bet on both sides of a proposition. And then the player comes, you know, then your individual needs come last, of course. but that doesn't mean they can't be met. So
that's some great information there. I will say, you know, as someone who's been dabbling in, sorry, Rufus, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also want to echo what Spanky said, that for the relationship to work, you have to give the bookmaker something as well. And I think that is super important. Like, it can't be just take. You have to, you know, if you can help them in any way and find a way to have a mutually beneficial relationship, then that's the best situation.
Yeah, you just can't be a taker. You have to be a taker and a giver.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'll say that as someone who's been dabbling more in the newly regulated legal books here in New Jersey, and pretty much all my action now goes through the regulated books. I found that there are some that are, most of these places have someone who will gladly talk to you one-on-one. It's the trouble of getting to that level, to that person who wants to treat you as a personal entity rather than as just, you know, one of their masses of bettors. For some people, for some books, that's just 1 or 2 levels up. But for some, you got to go all the way to the CEO before you get someone who actually treats you as a human, talks to you, reasons with you. They may still rule against you, but there's not that line manager that there was with a lot of Vegas, where you just had the supervisor that was on duty, and that was the person you need to kind of broker with. Now, you know, the trading is done in Estonia, and the people that make the decisions above the traders are hard to reach. So it's a little tougher to try to get a personal relationship with some of these.
You didn't have like Doug at the Win, who I think everybody. Well, yeah, I think everybody in this.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Hey, we got somebody else into the window here. One of my favorite guys, Dink, Alan Denkenson, legendary bettor. I did a video with him, and I guess we can call it viral, right, Dink? We got like 75,000 views on how to win at sports betting without having a computer model or being good at math. Dink gave a lot of great advice. He's kind enough to kind of join. Oh, did Dink just leave?
Well,
he's so modest.
I'm going to go back to bed.
Hey, Roxy,
Roxy, before you go, can you tell the story of the bets that took place in the LVSC office among the employees back before my time?
Which one, the airline ones or the lunch?
The next plane to land at McCarran seems to be a story people want to hear.
Well, what happened was we'd make bets on which planes were coming in, and I had a couple of guys in the office that were writing them down every day. But I had an OAG flight guide, and so I knew more. So, Southwest is like even money. The next flight's Southwest because they have so many flights. What you really had to do was get that one bizarro that was coming in. Like when Frontier only had 2 flights and stuff like that, you could take 6 to 1. And I had this OAG flight guide. And I knew that Frontier was, if they were on time, they're going to be one of the next 6 to land, or that wasn't enough. Next, one of the 3 to land, you could get 6, 7 to 1. That eventually they packed it in on me. But then I started hustling some of the math guys downstairs that were doing the computer project. And then I had to go to Control Tower because they had OAG flight guides. But we used to have how many French over and unders on how many French fries would be in the order from lunch and stuff like that. It was hey, what did you say? When you work in gambling, you do stuff like that, right? And it was a lot of fun back in those days. I enjoyed it. I'm going to make way for Dink.
He keeps kind of dropping off, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, well, maybe you need the space. So anyway, hey, it was great seeing you guys. I had a good time, and I'm gonna continue my morning sleep. And Jack, great for putting this together. Thanks.
Thank you, Roxy. It was an honor.
Thank you so much, Roxy.
Grace us here. We really appreciate the time. Okay, so that was great. I mean, when Roxy agreed to do it, I was over the moon. He's a legit legend. He's got stories upon stories. So that was so awesome for him to kind of drop in, from 12 time zones away, and have a beer in hand and an Irish coffee. That's the legend right there. I don't know if Dink was having some connection issues there. It kind of went in and out a little bit. I actually have a couple more people that have said they are going to drop by. So we're not quite done yet, but you guys, I don't want to take up all your time there of hanging out. We do have some questions from the chat if you guys want to kind of dive into a couple of those.
I cleared my whole calendar, Jack, so I can stay. I'm good as long as you need me. So we're good.
All right, awesome. You're my co-pilot.
Okay. I got like 10 minutes, so.
All right, Rufus. All right. There was a question back
podcast
here. Somebody was asking about college basketball middles, and I thought maybe that might be a good question for Spanky.
Maybe.
It might have been like 30 minutes ago now, so it might be tough to find. But someone was asking how many points they need to have an effective middle on college basketball. And I know that's it's a nuanced question. It's you can't really just go by 1 point, 1.5 points is fine. But Spanky, you want to, and I can't quite scroll back that far to find it. Spanky, do you want to talk a little bit about what do you guys look for when you're looking to get down on both sides of a game?
Well, first you want to know the side that the line's going to move towards. So that's the first part. And then in order, if you're thinking about going for a middle, you want to see if the line over moved and if it overreacted, and then you would just buy back. Sometimes you want to always beat the closing line, no matter what side you're betting. It's all about beating the closing line. So let's just say if a college basketball total opens 141, you go over 141, over 142. Line might go to 147, 148. You're like, hey, wait a minute, that's a little bit too much. So by betting under 48, and if it closes 145.5, 146, you still have positive expected value both sides of the bet. So and that's the best time to go for a middle, when you could always beat the closing line if you could recognize an overmove. How do you recognize an overmove? It's so difficult. A lot of it's feel and it's experience by doing this for so long. There's no book you can write. There's nothing, I could say. You have to be in the trenches, watch lines move every day, every minute. You're just watching, and you recognize and you see how lines are moving. And if you think that, hey, wait a minute, this might be getting pushed up, only for another sharp group to say, wait a minute, this got pushed up too much. We now, after betting all this over, the under now is becoming a sharp side. So this is just something that, you can't really explain it. You just have to live it. And I think it takes thousands and thousands of hours to be in the trenches to recognize it.
Fair enough. Rufus, anything to add to that?
It's great actionable information, Spencer. Only I had thousands of hours.
Well, listen, do you want me to downplay my skills? I'm being honest. Like I'm not going to tell anybody, hey, you could, it's real easy. It really isn't. I'm just being honest. I'm sorry. I can't, for if you want to bet a middle, and if you just want to bet middles, usually 2 points is probably a good. So if you go over 141, under 143, you're probably positive EV there. For sides, if you could lay, there's a bookmaker who used to tell me, you could lay 2 on a game and take 3 on a college basketball side. That's positive EV. Most other numbers, it's probably 1.5 points. The 1 obviously is the weakest of the numbers because of intentional foul scenarios. So in both NBA and college basketball, a 1 is a weaker number. The 7 in the NBA is a strong number because usually intentional fouls stop at 7 because it becomes a 3-possession game. So a 7 is an important number. In the NBA, it's probably the most important number because that's when intentional fouls stop. In college basketball, intentional fouls might stop when somebody's up 20 points. They're nuts. They just, they don't give a shit. So they'll just keep fouling.
We'll shift gears here because a couple people have put in the chat. Billy Walters. Will you ever have Billy Walters on this? No, I probably will not. I do not know Mr. Walter personally. I do not have, I know someone who knows him personally, but I'm not going to go through him. But yeah, I mean, look, Billy Walters is another legend in this business. And from what I understand, Billy Walters does not want to do media unless it's for his own purposes. And I'm not media anyway. But we'll go around the room here real quick. If any of you guys have had some interactions with Billy Walters, I'm going to go to Spanky last because I know he has. Rufus, have you ever had interaction with Mr. Walters?
I haven't. I've accounts that we've had. I've heard that these are Billy's plays, stuff like that. But you don't know if they're the real plays or not anyway. So I've never had any direct interaction with Mr. Walters.
Dave,
my turn. You can Google 60 Minutes Billy Walters, where he came and they shot what turned into a 7-minute piece, which in the media is a long piece. And he sat right in the VIP area, strutted through with our CEO, interviews, hung out. It was crazy. I'm in it. They scan the counter. I'm standing right there. There's a shot of me, and it's standing behind a couple guys. We booked his bets. We took his action. And I've been probably taking his bets through, people in the corporation since my first day down at the Golden Nugget. 100% I was. And because I am a regular guy, I just ask, are you B-Dub's runner? Maybe not. It was one of those relationships. I didn't care. I just wanted to know. It wasn't like I was running out and betting it because, like Rufus said, half the plays were fake. They had a guy in the room to tell, I'm Billy Walters' guy. He wasn't Billy Walters' guy, but he told everybody he was. And then there was a guy in the back watching him who was probably making the plays that were Billy Walters' plays. So, the guy's a legend, and what he did in the business and everything else. Yeah, I don't think they have Wi-Fi in jail. I don't know if Billy's in jail. I don't think they can get it. I don't know if he would come on. I don't think he would.
He's out now.
He got out because of COVID. He got the COVID part.
He got the early release.
Okay. I didn't even know that. We've been speculating since he went into jail. Is he still betting? That was the first question. Well, who's going to bet his plays? Who's going to bet? We don't know. Is he a ghost? So the guy became a ghost, kind of. I saw him. I met him. He's a real person. I know that. As someone who's seen the action and was at the beginning, it was lore, and then I moved here and hey, who's betting Billy plays? It became interesting, and then it became another customer. And if he bet the game, you move the number. That was it.
All right, Spanky, your turn.
I never met or talked to Billy personally. Obviously we have mutual friends, and there's a story I always tell. I used to have a runner at the Mirage, and I would always see Billy's betting, in faraway places. In Asia, and I would see lines move. An Asian bookmaker would move from 7 to 9 on a game, so I knew Billy was going to lay the 7. The world was painted 7. So I would bet, sometimes I would just sneak in a couple of different places nobody was looking at. One time I wound up laying the 7 at the Mirage, and I got a phone call from one of my buddies who moves games for a couple of people, and he asked me, "Do you have a runner at the Mirage?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking?" And he goes, "Just answer. Do you have a runner?" I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, is your runner's name Mark?" And I'm like, holy shit, how did you know my runner's name? Nobody knows my runner's name, so I'm getting a little nervous. Why are you asking this? He goes, "Listen, did you just lay 7 on Kansas or whatever the team was?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, listen, Billy just called me, and Billy wants to let you know that that's his play, and he appreciates that you don't bet his plays anymore at the Mirage." So, it was a very scary thing for me because it was early on in my career. Nobody knew who my runner was. And for Billy to get that information, he had people working behind the counter. He knew guys, and I remember the line the guy told me. He goes, "Don't ever bet something at the Mirage. Don't ever bet Billy's place at the Mirage. That's his place." And, it's like, wow, it's like he owns the Mirage, I guess. So it kind of it was nerve wracking a little bit because, I don't want to, that guy is a powerful guy, very powerful. And when it comes to Vegas, the guy has pull. So, I remember telling my guys, I'm like, listen, that's it. We can't bet the Mirage anymore. If we're seeing leaks and stuff, we got to respect, because the last thing you want to do is piss somebody like that off. But, Billy is a great philanthropist. He's done a lot. And you know, a lot of people say, you know, Billy, you know, sometimes you don't know what's fake and what's not. My buddy Spiro, who you know, the Greek the Greek sports and Olympic sports, you know, he would interact with Billy a lot, and he always told me one of the best questions that he ever asked Billy was, "What do you enjoy more, you know, winning the money or messing with people's heads?" And he told me Billy took a second. He took a second to think about it, and he goes, "It's probably a 50-50 proposition."
Minus 110, pick 'em.
Yeah, it's a pick 'em. It really, and that was his answer. And Spiro couldn't believe it. It's like, you know, every gambler would think, you know what, we just want to make this much money. But Billy was so good and so great at what he did. He actually loved messing with people's heads, people questioning, is that Billy's game? Is that really him? And he loved that. I think, you know, he just loved it. That's what I hear, you know, secondhand. But it's he really is a legend in the business, and I have nothing, you know, but admiration for the guy. And you know, you look up to somebody that has achieved the success that he has.
Yeah, I agree. Rufus, do you need to?
I'm out of here. Jeff and I have to record a podcast. We're having the great Jonathan Bales on tonight, so I'm actually really excited.
Oh,
I
tell
met
him
him.
I said hello, Rufus, please.
I met him for the first time last week, actually in Philadelphia in person. I hung out with him and Adam Levitan, and I got to meet Pillow Girl, who was amazing. But no, she's awesome, and and she made some amazing cookies. But
So for those of you who might have tuned in only in the last 2 hours, Jeff actually was kind enough to come on right at the jump here during the show. So thank him from me. But Rufus, thank you so much for your time tonight, and I appreciate it.
Jack, this is awesome. Like I love what you're doing.
Cool.
It's
cool.
good. It's good seeing. No offense to you guys, though. I came for Roxy, but
oh yeah.
Hey Rufus, so did we.
Yeah.
Okay.
Later.
Thanks, Rufus.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, so it's the three of us. There might be somebody else jumping in, but he kind of said he was getting done work at 10 p.m. Eastern. He's on the air out there in Vegas until 7 p.m. Pacific, and so maybe he didn't quite get a chance to come on, but we'll see. For everyone that's back, there was some talk here in the chat about teasers most of the night, and teasers are really popular during the NFL season, and I get why. You know, we all get why. It's a sort of a subset that works in the NFL when you tease through certain numbers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about teasers here right now. Dave, Spanky, you guys can kind of chime in, you know, as you see fit. There's two components to teasers, and that is, you know, you need to have going through good numbers for a 6-point teaser, but you also need to have a good price for that teaser. And a lot of people tend to want to do one and not the other, and then kind of play fast and loose with the rules. So the good teasers are the ones that go through the 3 and the 7. The 3, 6, and 7 is actually more way to put it with the NFL, because those are key numbers, and more games will land on those numbers than not. And speaking of teasers, somebody just joined in the green room here who I know knows a lot about teasers. I'm going to add him in real quick here. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gill Alexander from VSiN. Gill, I have this blocking your. There we go. Gill, thank you for joining us. I know you've already done 2 shows on VSiN today, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
I was just on the other side of the lot, Jack, so thanks for having me in.
That's right. That's right. I said it's sort of like old 70s TV talk shows where you know, a random celebrity might pop in just because they were on the lot doing some other work somewhere, and that's the reference to Gill. Gill, you missed Roxy, unfortunately. Roxy's already departed the show here. It was great. We talked about betting on planes landing at McCarran Airport. You know, it was stellar stuff. Gill, I was just about to talk a little bit about teasers, and I know you've talked a bit about that on your show. So I'm going to put you up here in the top corner and put the question back up here with the teasers. Because I was talking about, like, there's 2 components. You need to be able to go through those key numbers, and you also need to be able to find a good price for your teasers. And a lot of people play fast and loose with that. So yeah, going through the key numbers, that's the easy part. And the question here from Scott was, I took Green Bay plus 2.5 and Falcons plus 8.5. So Green Bay plus 2.5.
Minus 2.5, I think you mean.
Yeah. I was going to say that would be a little much to get that many points. So that's a good teaser. You went through the 3, 6, and 7. Good play. What price did you get, Scott? That's the question. It used to be back in the day, a 2-team teaser like that, you could get them at minus 110. You could sometimes find some places that would deal you even money. But these days, they're just going to fleece you on some teasers. We have places in Vegas that are dealing it at like minus 140. But then we got places in New Jersey that are dealing you the correct price on the teaser. In other words, it's almost like you're parlaying an alt line of the 2.5 and the 8.5. And as a result, that might be minus 174 or something like that. So you got to be careful with that. You got to make sure that you're still be able to get a 2-teamer at minus 110. If you can't get 2 at minus 110, but you can get 3 at plus 160, well, 3-team teaser at plus 160 is the same as, in terms of the math, as a 2-teamer at minus 110. So don't be afraid to look for the 3-teamer at plus 160. There's still plenty of shops that'll give you 3 teams plus 160.
Jack, let me jump in real quick.
Yeah,
talking about pricing. 1997, ABC Islands, offshore, and Spanky will remember this. We started as the place to bet teasers in the world. 6.2-team teaser, even money. 6.5 points was minus 110, and a 7.2-team teaser was minus 120. I feel like Roxy right now, listening to the prices. I can't believe what it's been. We wrote so much business on teasers. And I told somebody this on a show last week. We can lose on teasers, I don't know, as the book, 12 weeks out of the 16. Like, there's going to be weeks we're just not, you have no shot. The games are all going to fall. Every which way teaser's going to win. But the weeks we win will make up, most likely, for what we wrote and lost in those 12 weeks. We could go 4 and 12, their side, our side. And I think we're about even. If we go better than 4 and 12 of the 16 weeks, we're good. So you got to have a stomach to write teasers. And a lot of books don't have it anymore. They just increase the price. And listen, it's hard. It's hard to bet, to beat teasers. Teasers have more value now. Gill, wouldn't you say teasers have more value now in the NFL than maybe they've ever had?
I would think so. I will tell you, the only thing I can really provide is I know what the South Point went through, and forgive me if you heard this before, but they, the South Point, they do 2 through 8 leg teasers, and you would have better perspective on this than I would, Dave. And what up, Spanky?
What's up?
2 through 8 legs, and then 6, 6.5, and 7. So what is that? That's 21 different variations of teasers, and they did inventory a couple years ago. And they said, and they weren't really aware of this, which is interesting, but they went through it and they said 15 of the 21 were losers for them. And so what did they do? By the way, there was one that was the 6-team 6-pointer where they realized that they had priced it wrong. And so all the sharp bettors hammered them on those. And they were real big losers on those. So they realized the mistake on 6.6-teamers. And then the 15 out of the 21 that they lost on, what did they do? They, of course, incrementally jacked up the juice on those. And so I don't know. I haven't heard from them recently about it, but I'm guessing they corrected all that. So that's one book story about recent teaser history. I don't know if it's been a loser for them this year or not. But I know like Stanford long teasers didn't work last year, but this year they do again. So, as you guys know better than me, it's always an influx situation.
Yeah, Spank. I mean, are you looking to hammer teasers every week in the NFL?
Yeah, it all depends. The reason why, when you made a good point, Dave, is, obviously the closing number is, and even the opening number is stronger than it's ever been, and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger year in, year out. So, obviously numbers are more likely to just fall within that teaser range as the market becomes more efficient. Where 20, 30 years ago it was hard. The NFL was easier to beat, I would say. Now it's so hard to beat the NFL. The number is just that good.
Well,
so,
the game has changed too, though, Spank, right? Like football, NFL football looks a lot different now than it did even 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Forget about 20 years ago. You could get a blowout. Nobody beats anybody by 21 points anymore. We had a 3-team 10-point teaser. It was minus 120. 3-team 10-point teaser minus 120, and you could do totals. We didn't care. You could do whatever you wanted because the numbers didn't always fall right around. And like as the season goes on, the numbers are so tight. Like when you say strong, explain to people what you mean by the number is stronger now than it ever has been.
Again, this is just me, so I don't really know too many people out there, and I know a lot of people that really are consistently beating the NFL, pregame. I'm not talking about live. I'm not talking about props. I'm not even talking about totals. I'm talking about, sides, pregame. NFL is just such a tough thing to beat. And I think that it's there's like English Premier League. That's like the top where it's, you have to have, super, super advanced models. And there's a select few out there. And then the NFL, I think, is right underneath it. It's just a tough, tough market to beat.
Yeah, I look, teasers are still a decent play. I think as the market gets more efficient, teasers become better. That point was made, I think, by Wong in 2000. It was made by Michael Koenig in the Smart Money years later. It's been made, and the NFL just keeps getting more efficient. So I think teasers are still going to be a play, and they're going to be a play for a long time. And I think books are going to have to come to grips with, do you keep dealing these teasers that people can win at, or do you take it away in some way? And I think what some of these European books are doing, where they're pricing it based on the actual teaser rather than based on a blanket price, is going to be the way they end up going. Dink is back one more time. Dink, you're going to have to mute the YouTube because it's going to echo through. But it sounds like we're okay. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys? It's a pretty cool project here.
Yeah, it's worked out well. I appreciate it. You've been hanging out in the YouTube the whole night. I saw you pop up in the chat a few times. Do you have anything to contribute here to this teaser discussion?
Totals are higher, so that means there's a little more variance. I think there's a little bit of a lot. I think the one teasers are fine. You probably have a little positive equity, and any other teaser you probably have negative equity at 11 and 10.
Yeah,
that Green Bay teaser, he had plus 2.5, but he really meant
minus 2.5. Yeah,
kind of threw me for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Gill, how are you?
How you doing, Alan? How are you, man?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to see you.
Here I am. I love your show most of the time. It's a lot. That's high praise. I can't say that about everybody else.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll say it about everybody else's. I think Gill's show on VSiN is the best show by a mile and change. And I think Gill does a great job. I think he does. He highlights the industry as a whole. Looks at the offshore industry and highlights that part of the industry. Doesn't really, think, because a lot of guys think, try to pretend like that industry, that world doesn't exist. I really credit you, Gill, for acknowledging the offshore world. A lot of people think that's taboo or it's not the right move or anything like that. But let's face it, anybody that's betting professionally bets offshore. So if you don't acknowledge the offshore sports betting scene, you're not talking about the sports betting scene accurately.
I agree with that. Gil, I'll echo one more thing here. Is it's very clear when you're a professional bettor to be able to identify people who bet and people who don't bet. A lot of people on Twitter talk about their records and things like that, and some people criticize it. Oh, you never give out plays. You don't have, how do we know you're even a bettor? Trust me, people who are professional bettors can spot other professional bettors. And when I watch VSiN, there's very few people that I can spot and say, that guy's a professional bettor, but Gill is definitely one of them. No doubt about it.
Well, I appreciate it from all you guys. It means a lot. It means more from you guys than anybody, period. But I will tell you, as you can imagine, the balancing act is there are so many people out there, and we know the type of bettor that get super annoyed when it's not, here are your 5 college basketball plays of the day, right? I'll get a lot of stuff where they'll be like, oh, he never gives picks out, or he never does that. So it's this weird thing where you kind of have to be, authentic while at the same time trying to appease a greater, mass of people, which is a tough balancing act, I think.
I'd like to add to that. I think Gill makes a great point, and I think this is important for anybody out there that's listening. If you're looking for picks, these are like Band-Aids. This is a temporary fix. You just want to be able to get yours in, and that's it. The right way to approach sports betting or anything in life is not to look for that temp fix. You want to be able to know how to do something long-term and create that value for yourself, because the guy that's giving you picks might not be giving you picks tomorrow or the next day. And now what? You're left with, what are you going to do now? So I think it's important to be able to learn how to go about beating sports, or how to be able to lose less or win money betting sports. So anybody that's looking out there for picks, you're looking at it the wrong way. Forget the picks. There's going to be games that play every day, tomorrow, next week, next month. You want to be able to figure out how you're going to go about it to be able to make a better number than a bookmaker, or to be able to beat the closing line. If you're able to solve that problem, then that's it. You got it. That's the holy grail. Forget these temporary picks and forget about trying to, find just get a winner today. If you want to win for life, you got to take a step back, and then you got to think about this thing long term.
I'll tell you what, that's an interesting thing for a content thing. And I got to visit with Gill yesterday. We compared stories and notes. That was unbelievable. I still can't believe that we had that discussion, because I didn't know that story. But I listen to people, and I always go, what do people want to watch, or what do people want to hear? And I think it's what Spanky's doing with bettors. It's excellent. It's who's who of stories and things. Gill, who gives a shit if you give picks or not? Like, seriously, it's intelligent discussion about the business, and it's the pick things. I say it all the time. I do it on my podcast. I mean, we do a podcast every week. Me and it's down to one, but we work in risk rooms, and we've been around, and people will DM us and like, well, what do you like about this game, or why do you like this game? It doesn't really matter. I can tell you, but it doesn't matter. And I don't want to be one of those guys. Everyone and anyone, if you pay any attention to social media, is giving picks. But nobody has the stories and people on that like Spanky has on his. Gill's got a regular crew of guests that are amazing. And Dink has lived a life and I mean, had a movie written about it. So like just this panel here alone, like I want to hear those. I'll ask you who you like, but I don't really care. And I think that's what is like interesting to me from the content and media standpoint that people want. Like, why are people here right now? Do they want to know who we like on Sunday night? I hope not, because if you're here for that, you better leave. Just hit go home and go to sleep. Because I mean, I could tell you, but that's not why we're here. And I think that like the guys that have been around it and the guys that have talked about it for so long or have lived it, I think that's going to separate where this all goes. And so, that's what I'm looking to do myself. And I appreciate everything that Gill's doing with that. Spanky, you're not a broadcaster, but I mean, it's fun to listen. And the characters you get on, you ask very straightforward and honest questions. When you start listening to your podcast, it's compelling. So, and then, Jack and Dink did a video. It wasn't even the greatest audio and video and this and that. 75,000 views already? Like, and how many more is it going to get after this? So I think it's there. We just have to find a way to get it out there.
Right. Yeah. Because when you look at YouTube, it's all these people giving you picks, giving you analysis, and it's for stuff that's stale the day after they put it up there. Who cares what somebody likes on week 13 games. You're not going to care next week, that's for sure. I'm out there to make some evergreen content, stuff that people can go back and go, you know what, Jack talked about that. Let me go back and play that video and talk, or maybe you go through a bad stretch and you remember I made a video on how to be a better loser. Because when you're losing, how to deal with losing, that sort of thing. So
how to fish as opposed to give a guy
right, exactly.
Learn how to do this business. You can listen to Beeson every day, and by the weekend you'll have 6 people on one side and 4 people on the other. But maybe the presentation will sway you to make a following bet, but. Everybody presents, and everybody has something that might catch your fancy. There's just too many people on 2 different sides. But if you learn how they got to the sides, you might be, I need to do more injury work, and I need to not do trend work. Trend work is, hot air, and injury work, if you can get injury as quick as that guy on the top of my 4 people on the right, that will help. It's really vital what you know how to win instead of who's going to win. You don't know who's going to win. The line's pretty tough. You have to find something out about that line that makes it not as tough as it looks.
I agree with that. Hey, Dink, I think your audio is giving us a little bit of a crackle and feedback. I don't know if that's something.
Is it any better?
Oh, you know what, Gill? I think it's you, actually. Yeah, it is you, Gill. I don't know.
Blame me as always. I'm always the guy.
Hey, Dink, did you find a PlayStation 5 yet? I can't find one.
I can't find one for less than 900.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I thought it would go down because they announced, I'm sure everybody loves to stop it. And they announced that they were going to put more on the marketplace. But it went down a little, but now it's like stagnant at 900. Or 500 retail.
So this is a perfect example with PlayStation 5. A lot of the technology we use or to look for line moves, we could, and I don't want to get too in deep. It's probably not going to like it, but we could use the same technology to be able to just keep refreshing websites to find out when a PlayStation 5 changes from out of stock to in stock, and then you have something just keep running in the background. Just like if you have if I'm looking for late 2.5, the line's 3, but right when it goes to 2.5, I get alerted of it. Same thing with a PlayStation. If somebody learns how to code, you can write that, and then you can earn. If you want to buy PlayStations, have something running to alert you. When it gets back in a stock, you buy it, or you automatically buy it. You write something, and then you can earn.
How hard is that, though, Spank? How hard is it to learn to do that? Because that is a valuable skill in life, let alone sports betting. But you make it sound like, it's so easy. It's not easy.
No, it's definitely not easy. But you understand, I went to Rutgers. I have a computer science degree, so I learned this stuff. I'm a computer programmer. I'm a coder. So this is the stuff I know. But I'm not the smartest guy at all. You know what I mean? But I just learned it. I read books and I learned it. Jack does a lot of scraping videos on his YouTube stuff to try to be able to pull data automatically and create a model. I'm sure somebody could take some of that and apply it to how to scrape, different websites that might be able to, have sold out PlayStations or sold out sneakers. There's so many businesses where out there when it hits the market, tickets like me and Dinky, we would get wrestling tickets that were really high in demand, and we'd be able to just find a way to be able to grab the tickets and get it fast, and then be able to, if we wanted to go to the show or sell them at a premium or whatever, you do whatever you want.
I never sold them at a premium.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm not saying anything. I know that. I'm just talking in general. If you have the technology to do so, and that's where I believe we shine. If you have the technology to be able to get the best number, get the best price, get the sold out PlayStation right when it goes back in stock, and it's only going to stay in stock for a minute, for 30 seconds, for 2 minutes, but it's the same technology. If you're able to utilize that technology and grab that, whether you lay 2.5, knowing the line's going to 4, whether you buy a PlayStation for $500, knowing you could sell it for a dime, you're always going to be able to earn if you're able to find a way to use technology in your favor.
So I'll speak for the bookmaker versus the dressmaker comment that's your mission right now on social media and everything else. your technology is better and you're better at it than a lot of books. The books are undermanned and they're way under technology. I know the systems that are being used. I saw the systems that we used 23 years ago down in the islands. A lot of the stuff's better than what's out there right now. You're constantly evolving. You've been evolving. Guys that code are way ahead of the game. What do you do as the book?
Richie Baccelleri, who runs Stadium Technology and everything, and I talked to him, he's going to be putting in the auto mover for a lot of the sports books out there. He said it's coming. And I think, and again, I talked about this earlier, that's the big thing. Sports books need auto movers to be able to write one bet to a price. That's why the limits are so low on some of these apps, because you can't write 10 bets to the same price. You're going to get knocked over the head. So that nobody expects a bookmaker, to write, 10 bets out of 10 limit bets at -5 when you know the line's going to steam. You want to be able to write the one bet and then automatically move and then have the guy lay a worse price. So I think when you have technology working for you, and I think that the sports books are kind of a little bit behind on technology domestically in Vegas and whatnot. I think they need to get there because it's 2020. If in 2020, if you're still taking more over the counter than on the app, you're completely backwards. You're doing it wrong. Pinnacle back in 2001, 2002 was the first ever bookmaker to wind up taking more on the internet than on the phone. And they had a phone number back then. And then they just said, no, we're going to take more online. And it was unheard of. How could you? That's impossible. But it was revolutionary at the time, and it was trend setting. And now places like a Bet Chris, who in 2013, believe it or not, that's when they said, okay, no more phone bets. We're going to take more on the internet. And it took them that long to be able to adapt, but now they're there. And then eventually the phone is just dying down, just like the counter is dying down. Sports books are no longer filled with people, that are professional people. There's no more runners really. Everything is on apps. So you want to be able to take as much as possible on the apps and to be able to just write and auto move to protect yourself from getting double banged.
Yeah, that's good advice. There was a question here in the chat about let's see, find it here. In-game betting. They asked me, so I'll answer first. What are my thoughts on in-game betting? I think in-game betting is a really good opportunity, especially with some of these European books. I think they have some pricing inefficiencies when it comes to in-game American sports. They may have perfected in-game betting for soccer and tennis, which are hugely popular in Europe, but I've seen some inefficiencies on their in-game product here on American sports. So it's tough. If you're getting started in in-game betting, I would definitely caution you. You need to make your bets during commercial timeouts and between quarters, between innings. In fact, I'd probably say if you're doing in-game betting, start with baseball, even though we're way outside the cycle of baseball right now. But at least then you're betting between innings. It's a little bit cleaner. You're not going to be able to bet between pitches. The system's not that agile yet. But I think in-game betting is definitely an opportunity there for a lot of people. Do you guys have feedback on that one?
So do you compare the European line with the Chris line and see differences?
So for different sports, I do it different ways. I look at the Don Best screen, which has a few different in-game pricing going on, Pinnacle among them. Don Best also provides a lot of the in-game pricing for a lot of these books these days, and you can kind of spot which books they are. But then also for something like baseball, you can do your own model, which is what I use for baseball, because baseball is a very state-like sport. In other words, there's a man on first or 2 outs. There's a man on first and second, 1 out. There's different states, and you can kind of scrape that data and come up with a model just based on generic information, and then you can kind of fine-tune that downward. But I've done that for years with baseball in-game betting. And the nice thing about baseball in-game betting, there's even in-game props with baseball. Will there be a run scored in the next inning, or will this happen? And those are usually pretty juicy situations that tend to get you backed off from books after a while. But it's
the problem is the juice is a little high for a 10-cent sport. Now you do 30-cent in-game betting. That makes things that's an ugly look for me to start thinking, wow, it's a 10-cent sport. I can cut it down to like a 5-cent line if I shop. And now I have one line or two lines and they're both 30-cent lines. I can cut it down to a 20-cent line if I shop, maybe. And I'm reluctant to do that.
I can tell you this. I did the in-game wagering at CG for the last 2 years when nobody wanted to touch it. And I said, I'll do it, and I sat with Richie for a month, which was unbelievable. I learned more about this business in that month than I did in the last 10 years. Like, it was we sat together, we had lunch. I let him smoke 25 cigarettes a day. It was great, but I had to learn the system and I had to learn how to use it. So I would do the game, and when I was doing the game, I turned the delay off. I wanted more bets. We needed volume. We needed to take bets. It's hard to get bets. That's like do a basketball game and try to get a bet. The line, the auto thing changes it too fast. You can barely get a bet. So Jack is right. You have to bet during pauses of play to get a fair shot. I think pricing is an issue. I would turn the juice down almost back to 110 to try to encourage bets. If you were going to bet here or you were going to bet at another competitor, I wanted your bet because there were options. It's really, really hard when I feel like, from the book's point of view, if you have a faster feed, it's not fair. And a lot of times I was on the same feed all the time as what you were watching at home. So that part of it was even, but where I was looking at the lines on the screen, they were faster. I knew the score on the screen before I saw it on my TV. So you have to be very cautious about betting in game. I wouldn't say, and again, Jack, another great point. Baseball, start with that. It's a slower pace game, and then kind of graduate to football. Hockey, I think hockey is very similar to soccer, and the pricing models that they've built are actually that's the best I've seen. The product for U.S. sport is hockey in game because it's very similar scoring, maybe one or two more goals, but. A game where there's a money line, minus 1.5 spread and a total of 2.5 or 3 versus hockey. It's the total's 5.5 or 6, or now that the NHL is the way it is, maybe it's 6.5 or 7, but it's very similar. Then you kind of do baseball, which is kind of different because of the pitchers. And then you go to football. Basketball is the hardest. I think if you're going to try to beat basketball, you got to just, look to make plays. You don't bet the team that's up on an 8-0 run. You're looking to take the other side and create middles and different things that the math guys can explain better than me.
I like to do basketball at the last possible second when they'll offer it, with maybe like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter on a break, because you can get a feel for what they're going to have to do in that situation. Like, will a team be desperate and be taking threes? Is a team in foul trouble? Is a team that foul to gives? It's a limited time span with 5 minutes left. They usually take it down after that. They don't offer it with like 2 minutes left.
I would leave it up. When I was doing the game, I would leave it up almost to the last basket. And I can tell you, I would write more business in the last 5 minutes of a game than I did the entire game, almost as much pregame. You could bet if you let guys like you and everyone else like me and whomever could know that they could bet the last 5 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it wouldn't last long because somebody doing it would really have to be skilled at it. But I'd let you lay 6. I'd let somebody take 7 and just keep doing it. At the end of basketball games, Spanky was talking about it, especially if it's around, 4, 5, or 6, where they're still going to foul, they're not going to foul, they're going to dribble out, somebody hits a random 3. The end of basketball games are great. I would write more business than turn it off. And I think, Dink, you're right. The common thing to do is to turn it off, when I think the opposite is better for the business. But you got to have people. Like the books, like a lot of the things you guys talk about, not being able to take bets on props or being limited. Sometimes it's just resources, fellas. They don't want to pay someone else to sit in the room and watch the monitor. Like they don't want to pay someone else to do the numbers and take the bets. So the easy thing to do is we'll just put it on the limited setting and, the hell with them. They want to bet it. They can bet it. If they don't, they can go somewhere else. And that's not the right way to think as the book if you're trying to build the business and get volume. Unfortunately, as the bettor, that you're at the mercy of that.
I think a lot of people in the last minute, especially if the game is right near the spread, will be hedging their side, and people will be hedging both sides. And I think that's when you start writing some good bets in the last minute or two. I like my side. I laid 4. They're up by 3, and I have the ball. I'm going to get off this side. And the other person said, I took 4. I'm down by 3. I can get off my side too. And you're writing two-way business on people who just don't want their position anymore because it's pretty random, and they're going to lessen their need. I would do that. I think sometimes, like a football game, like here comes the junker touchdown. Let me get off my side or reduce my side because I've been through this all my life and I'm tired of the Eagles scoring, and I'm tired of the Ravens scoring, and I'm tired of the team I beat not scoring. So a lot of those situations where it's one drive, I'm looking to get off my full bet and maybe make it a half.
And I could do it at minus 117 instead of minus 132. Like if I wrote more bets at minus 117, what's the problem with that? Why does it have to be 128, 136? You're laying on a number like it. You see the stuff and you watch it and you go, man, what are you doing? And I've sat in on meetings where you're being pitched the software, and I've asked point blank, does anyone use this shit? Like seriously, because they're just like, all right, Dave, you got to go. Like you got to go, because I asked the questions that like I wouldn't bet into it, and I would be embarrassed to be the book offering it, like because I know you guys are on the other end of it, and I respect you enough to go. I mean, I got the advantage already because I'm taking all the bets. I don't have. They're making single bets. I'm taking them all, and they're laying minus 110, 17, 28. I'm gonna try to screw them now too and make it even higher. It doesn't make any sense.
What you're doing live, you compare it to the line you respect the most and give it a penny better on each side or pennies better on each side. Simple. Both sides, all the time. Both sides. It's that Rick guy. He does that a lot. And you're going to bet the dog with him because it's the best line available. You're going to bet the favorite with him with the best line available. And he's writing two-way business and earning 6 cents instead of 10 cents like everybody else.
I think the reason why a lot of these guys, like with props and in-game, where you deal a more juice line is because it's beatable. And, that's why, just like props, you're seeing 30-cent lines. So I don't bet in-game. My guys do it a little bit, but that's not my thing. It came after me, so it's not, but props, there's no such thing as a 20-cent prop line. It's rare you see that anymore. It's got to be 30 cents because it's that beatable. Nobody pays attention to it, and the limits are low, and that's just how it is. It's just a part of the business, and I don't mind that. You can't expect a bookmaker to deal again, I'm just being, devil's advocate. I understand what you're saying, Dave, but just as for props and in-game, these things can be beat with the right models and with information. In-game, you have to, a lot of these books, they got to make sure they have the right feed, and you got to make sure, because like you said, you got to bet stoppage times when things, and there is no stoppage time in soccer, everything's just going back and forth. The clock don't stop. So you kind of, it's just hard if somebody's at the game, all you need is that 5 seconds, 5 seconds is like a lifetime in the in-game world. And they're used to, you want to get to a level where, you want to offer an in-game price, is this basketball player going to make the second free throw or not? And we're just, I don't know if we'll ever be there. It's just hard because of the feed delays, because of everything. It's tough. And I think that, I don't blame bookmakers for dealing a more juice line on in-game, but I think it's because it's more beatable. If I were just starting off, I wouldn't recommend in-game. I would probably, because in-game, I've seen the best of the best sports bettors out there get crippled because of in-game.
Killed.
It's addicting. It's addicting.
I have a terrible record.
It's addicting, and a lot of guys, get crippled because of it. So I would definitely start off with lower markets, prop markets, and stuff like that. And once you're able to beat those, then you start going more towards just regular stuff.
The problem with props is that the sharps are so involved with them,
and no one else is though. That's the problem. There's no liquidity in that. We would put up props every primetime game. 3 guys would bet, the yardage prop. You, and you. That's it. I couldn't get a bet on the other side. I'd like to give you whatever you wanted, but you bet it first, Spank. I moved it, 15 cents. I didn't move the number. Dink comes in. He bets it. I go, oh, shit, now I got to move it again. I move the number and the juice. And Jack knows it's still not where it's supposed to be, and he bets it. And I sit there, and I offered you $300 a pop or say a nickel. I need one stupid prop for $1,500, and I know I'm dead. I'm dead 8 out of 10 times.
Exactly. And a lot of people, a lot of guys, semi-pros, pros, they reach out to me, Spanky, can you believe I'm limited on this? Can you believe the bookmaker threw me out? And I'm like, what are you betting? He goes, look, I'm trying to bet this alternative line or these prop lines. And, what do you expect? Like, you're not betting meat and potatoes. They're not writing any other business besides your bets. It's all one-way action. You can't do that. If you want to be, you want to start off, to be able to wet your feet, to be able to think that, prove that yourself that you could do this, sure, start off in the prop market. But if you want to be able to do this long term, and like Roxy said earlier, to scale up, you got to get out of the props. You got to get to the next level. Because if you just continuously bet props, it sticks out like a sore thumb. A bookmaker's not going to like you. You're not going to be their favorite customer. They don't give a shit about you. You can't help them in any way. You're just, when their pants are down, you're coming and then you're giving it to them. Nobody wants that shit. Everybody wants to be able to, if you're betting meat and potatoes, side totals, money lines, okay, no problem. But if you're just doing exclusively props, that's a no-no. And for anybody out there, a lot of pros, that's all they do, and it's just not a good long-term solution.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that one. Hey, I'm gonna change the question here a little bit, because I think there's a good one here in the chat that I didn't really consider until now. I'm going to bring it up here. What do you think the future holds as far as tournament-style betting? And I think he means like the Westgate Super Contest and the Circa Millions and that sort of thing. Do you think what opportunities do you believe exist around that? That's a really good question, Alec. Here's the thing about we're losing Dink there. Here's the thing about the tournaments is they're only going to get bigger. We're going to get interstate gambling in some way, whether it be, I don't think you're going to be able to bet across state lines, but at least going to be able to share liquidity pools amongst consenting states. And, that's going to be a huge step forward. Could you imagine the Super Contest if it was nationwide, or Circa Millions? The Circa Survivor this year was big because either everybody was in it or knew somebody that was in it or wanted to talk about being in it, or, it was the topic of conversation. It was a brilliant marketing stroke there by Derek Stevens and his crew to make that completely zero vig. Can you imagine a nationwide Survivor contest? That was, look, here's the one thing I think sports bettors all agree on is we like to kind of appear that we're the champ. And when you have these tournament style things, they're gonna crown the champ. And that's a big ego boost for a lot of people. So I think they're going to be hugely popular. I don't know if you guys agree, but I think tournament style betting in different shapes and forms is just going to be the next big thing in sports betting.
I think if you want to think about it like from a poker standpoint, a guy named Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker, and it boomed because a guy could sit with pros and either get lucky or get good, run hot, whatever it is, and win. I would love, Jack. I mean, this, first of all, before we go, I just want to thank you for this. This is awesome. This is a great idea. I'm so glad you came up with it, and I'm so glad that I'm able to sit here this long. I cleared the whole calendar because I didn't know who was coming. So it was a very cool idea. But can you imagine you put together, between your contacts, my contacts, whomever, and we come up with a tournament where we're going to handicap the football season. And everybody enters, and it's you, it's Rufus, it's Spanky, it's this, and you can all go in, and everybody can join it. And now you're the king of the kings, whatever it is. Pick something and put the regular guy who thinks, he's on Twitter, he's on Instagram talking about his picks. He got all the winners. He already knows, and he gets to actually prove it, and we do it like, September, October, November are the satellites, and now you get to handicap from December to the Super Bowl. So you qualify that way, and then bang it out December and you crown the champion after the Super Bowl, and you can include the Super Bowl props as a way to, separate the end, whatever it is. I think it's a monster idea, and I can't agree more that I think that's a different way to get the masses involved, because explaining sides, totals, money lines, minus 110, some people get numb. But if you tell me I can pick 5 games against the spread or whatever, like or Survivor, I need to pick one game right with no spread every week, and I can win that, I'm in.
Yeah. Let me add to that, because I think that what Circa did this year, I think is such a revolutionary thing. It makes the super contest that the Westgate does not really, it's a no vig contest. So now the super contest, there's vig involved. So if I had to choose between either paying no vig or vig, it's just obvious, you know what I mean? And the Circa did it to be able to generate business, and now it's like you spoil the public. You can't go back to a vig contest anymore because you started no vig. So now the Westgate, why would anybody out there, nothing against the Westgate, whatever, but why would you pay vig when you could enter the same exact contest and it's no vig? It just, you know what I mean? So I think to try to generate business, I think it's a great idea, and I think what Derek Steven and that whole crew did, what those guys did, is just phenomenal. And the buzz was there. Everyone thought there was an overlay. It wound up being not an overlay at all, right. And they got all the business because it's number one, it's no vig, and it's just like when you have to choose between that contest, and there's a few other contests in Vegas and in town, and DraftKings does a couple of contests. All these guys, no vig is, that's the thing. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you not, any gambler, when there's no vig, when it's an even money, and the book is not charging you to enter the contest, there's no fee there. You look for these things, and I think that any educated, you could be the dumbest of dumbest guys, and you could be a monkey just throwing darts on a board, but know that when you're playing no vig, it's such a great thing for the customer, and it's a way for a sports book to give back, and I commend the guys at Circa for doing so.
Yeah,
you should know the strategy if you're playing these contests, because most people do. When to take the best of the number, when to go against the best of the number. There's a lot of that to it. It's more strategy than handicap.
Yeah, and that's a good point there, Dink, is it's sort of like how playing a poker ring game is different than playing a poker tournament. And, but that's going to be part of the allure to it for a lot of players that are coming into it. They may be, I'm not the best handicapper, but I can do tournament strategy, and, they'll get it started into sports betting. It's a great opportunity. I hope it grows. Circa was big this year, and this was during a pandemic when a lot of people I know didn't fly out there to enter those tournaments. So, hey, it can be huge. The DraftKings tournament in New Jersey is an overlay this year, a fat overlay. And, so there's a lot of positive things going on in different states when it comes to the possibility of tournament style betting. Guys, it is after 11:15 here on the East Coast. Oh, wait. What was that, Dink?
I just wanted to know if Spanky was in the draft. Did you play?
I can't hear you, Dink.
Yeah, you're a little soft.
The audio is kind of coming.
Did you enter the DraftKings contest? That's what he wanted.
No, I personally didn't enter it. They don't let me play, but my wife entered it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
She's a good handicap.
She's one of the best in the business, actually.
I have one more thing to tell Spanky that I'm going to go to. Sting signed with AEW.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great, man. That's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy. You guys watch wrestling?
I hear there might be a wrestling show in the works between Dink and Spanky.
God.
We'll get that the right time happens. That's not a match between me and Spanky.
I love it. Everybody
will come out.
All right, so guys, it is after 11:15 here on the East Coast. To those of you who have been in this chat since the very beginning, 3+ hours ago, thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. I think this was a great opportunity. I don't know how often we'll get to do this. It was kind of like a one-off just because there's no Thursday night football. comment here from Dion. Thank you. Hey, look, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about no picks, just education. I had some of my closest friends in here tonight that were able to kind of drop some education. I think we had a good time. There was definitely a lot of fun shared amongst us here. I want to thank all of my guests tonight. I had Jeff Ma, Drew Dinsick, Andy Molitor, Dave Sharapan, Spanky, Rufus, Roxy Roxborough, Dink, Gill Alexander. I mean, this was a
David
lineup.
Purdum. Don't forget Purdum.
Oh, David Purdum too. Yes, not wearing his usual hat. Threw us off a little bit.
And Jason Pillow Girl, right? You had them on too.
Hey, if I could get Bales on here, Jonathan Bales and his girlfriend, that would be great as well.
That's your next deal. Come on, I think he likes.
Well, I'll definitely try. If I do this again, I'll definitely try to get maybe some DFS guys in on the mix. Anyway, thank you to everyone who joined me tonight. Thank you for all you guys who stuck around and watched and chatted. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions that were asked, but hopefully you'll give this video a like, a thumbs up. That helps me a whole deal. And subscribe, and maybe we'll do this again sometime. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much for the time. Until next time.
Good job, Jack.
Thank you.